Good morning and welcome to the Nebraska Schools Employer Reporting Workshop. My name is John Tidwell and I am one of the training specialists here at the Nebraska Employees Retirement System, or NPERS for short, and I'm excited to be your host today. Now I'm part of the Education Services team, which includes Nicholas Bennett, he's our other training specialist, and Heather Critchfield Smith, she's our manager. Now with us today, we also have Sammy Speaker and Stephanie Harrell from our accounting team. Then we also have Vanessa Holan, that's the internal auditing manager. And then also on our team, we have Aaron MacArthur and Eva Prevey from, again, internal auditing. Now, thank you for being here and let's get started. Now to start things off with, I want to do a bit of housekeeping, okay? First, you'll notice your microphones are muted and your cameras are off. This isn't because we don't want to see your smiling faces. It's simply to help the webinar run as smoothly as possible. WebEx typically tends to match the connection speed of the slowest participant, so keeping microphones and cameras off helps to avoid any lags or interruptions. I just wanted to reassure you that there's nothing wrong with your system. Everything's set up the way on purpose, or this way on purpose, to give everyone the best experience possible. Now, next, everyone should have received our presentation materials and email leading up to this event. These documents are going to allow you to follow along with the presentation today. Now, as I mentioned in the chat, they're actually available in the webinar to download, okay? But don't worry about that. If you can't do that, once I'm done talking, I will go ahead and send an email to everyone, okay? Let's see here. What else we got here? Next, let's talk about some questions. We know you have a lot, if not all. You came today with questions about your retirement and reporting and stuff. We definitely encourage you guys to ask. However, I do want to set a few expectations up front. We do not have access to everybody's personal information, and we can't go into the specifics. This is more of a general forum, so there might be sidebars, but Vanessa's going to come up later and she's going to really address as many questions as possible, especially since this is going to be more written dialogue, okay? So we're going to do our best to address all of your questions. So next, talking about questions. You're going to see two different panels on the right side of our presentation, one called chat and one called Q&A. If you don't see the Q&A panel, there are three dots at the very bottom on the right-hand side of the window, and you'll see an option to open the Q&A panel. Don't get this confused with the circle button with three dots. You want the one furthest to the right with no circle called Panel Options. If you have any questions, we ask that you use the Q&A panel and not the chat. The chat will be something that our team, the auditing and accounting team, will be sharing information with you. So if you can use the Q&A, that allows us to save those responses and also make sure that we do address each and every one of your questions, okay? All right, without any further ado, okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, my apologies. I was supposed to advance these things. These are where I was talking about as far as clicking on the screen to get to those three dots to the Q&A. Now, without any further ado, I want to bring up Sammy. Samantha is from our accounting team, and she's going to talk to you guys a little bit about some accounting business, okay? Sammy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Let's see if I can. Are you gonna click through, John?
I'd be happy to click it for you
Okay.
if you want.
All right. The reason I'm going first this time is because of LB 645. This is basically known as the bill that makes all of our jobs harder in the name of saving the state some money. Um, if you didn't know, because I didn't know before this happened, every year the state would send us a set amount of money that would just get invested back into the plan. It helped kind of smooth things out in the years where we were not fully funded. They don't want to do that anymore. So depending on how well funded we are, there is how much the state is going to send to us. And you can see that in the graph above. Politics also happen behind the scenes, so now the employee contribution is tied into this as well. So what this means is every year going forward until they change the law again, there's going to be an actuarial study every year that will state how fully funded we are, and then depending on what that study shows is going to change the contribution rate each year. So we are going to send emails out every year for this, but at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to keep up to date on this. If you're not receiving the emails, reach out to us, let us know. Um, but I mean, even if you don't receive the email, you have to be aware of this is going to be a thing every single year going forward until the law changes again. Um, so John, can you click to the next slide? What it means is starting this year, the wage and contribution reports for your July. So this year would be 7/1/2025 to 7/31/2025. Wage and contribution report must fully reflect the new contribution rate. So this year it's going to be the 8%. It has to be fully 8%. There's no partial, our system won't accept any partial data. So all of your employees' contribution must be the 8%. The employer contribution is still going to be the 101% match. For 8%, that's 8.08%, but our system is still going to be looking for the 101% match. So if you're one of the bigger schools, you're kind of aware it's not completely that same percentage for the employer. It's still going to have to reflect the 101% match. Okay, here's fine, John. But just so you're aware, connected with the keeping up to date on emails, I don't have a good place to put this, but they just announced a new section of the non-con portal that will show you missing non-cons for any missing non-cons that you have. It's a new system. There's bugs. Don't be surprised if you run into any of them. If you do have any issues or you think something's strange, just send us an email with details. Because anytime IT releases any of um, these new features, there's going to be issues, and what happens is it gets sent out. We have a bunch of comments or issues that come to us, and then we have meetings with IT to help smooth stuff out. So this is just a more recent one. Um, yeah, just let us know if you have any issues, and then please keep us up to date. It is your requirement. I don't have this written in the PowerPoints, but it is your requirement to keep us up to date for any contacts you have with the school. So any reporting agents who submit reports or do non-cons, or someone who should just be on our list as a contact for these kinds of emails. Because we just sent out that mass email about this new change, and now I have a stack of papers for bounce backs. So just to reiterate, make sure that your contacts with us is up to date, and that is it's your requirement to give us that information because we aren't going to know your turnover. Next page. As school reporting agents, it is your responsibility to upload the wage and contribution reports, and also anytime you enroll any new members into the plan, you need to give them the new member information packet. This includes the member handbook, a beneficiary form, and the application for vesting credit. It is your requirement to give them these informations. It is not mandatory for you to know about these different forms or to send them back to us. These are not requirement to enroll somebody into the plan. So it is only a requirement for you to give them this information. It is not a requirement for them to give them back to us to enroll them into the plan. If there's any information that you do want to give to the member, the beneficiary form must be an original, no copies, and it has to be physically mailed to us to be valid. It's not valid until we receive it. In the application for vesting credit must be submitted within 180 days of employment for it to be valid. Once you hand these forms to the members, your job is done. If they have any further questions about these, have them call our office. They're going to get better information on an individual level to help them with those. The monthly report, they're due on the 10th of the next month. So for example, the May report will be due on June 10th, or the June report due on July 10th. This due date is for you confirming your report. It is not for us accepting it or posting it. That due date is the end of the month. So, and then there's going to be late fees if neither of those options do not get done. So if you do not have your report confirmed by the 10th, there's a late fee, and if they're not posted by the end of the month, there's another late fee. We don't like doing these late fees, it's kind of tedious. So the way to help with this is if we are asking you questions, you respond in a timely manner. If there's any issues that come up where you don't think you're going to get the deadline, just reach out to us. I mean, we know we're human. Stuff can get waived if there's a good reason. These are here for a reason because we need to get this stuff done at a certain time. When uploading your report, the normal process is entering that information, uploading it, and then checking for flags, checking for any issues that may be on it, validating your report, and then checking the summary, verify everything's right, and confirm it. And that is the confirm point is that the 10th of the month. Um, and then after that, we will go over and check your report for flags and we'll accept it. Thanks, John. All right, name changes. Any members you enter on these reports, they need to have their full legal name. No nicknames, because odds are it's going to change back and forth between their nickname and their full name, and it causes issues in our system. So just use their full name. It saves everybody time. If you have anybody who's going to have a name change through marriage, divorce, or any other means, don't change it until you see the updated Social Security card. We have lots of issues at the beginning of every year where someone's got married, school changed their name, and then turns out when they're doing taxes, they never actually changed it. So just always ask for the updated Social Security card when you are changing a last name or a first name. Once you have uploaded your report and you validate your report, you will need to go and check for if there are any errors on your report. You can see this by clicking edit, where it is highlighted there in that under that red box. You'll see a list of people. If there's flags, it'll just, I think, be a list of social security numbers. Click on those and then look at the flags and then either give us a note on what the issue is, or ask us or clear out or fix the flags. If you see nothing, then there's no flags and you should be good to go to verify your information and confirm your report. These 3 flags will suspend your report. It will not let you confirm it. The this top one is going to be one that's going to be you might be seeing more often now that the contribution rate is going to be changing. And this is anytime the employee contribution does not match the reported salary. The way to fix that is to go and change the employee contribution rates. There's really no other way than just making sure that the wages and the contributions match. Little edit on this slide is I have 9.78 and that's true for your June report if you're still working on that, but going forward it's going to be the 8% rate for the July onward until next year. There may be a new contribution rate that you have to be aware of. So just be always aware of where the contribution rate is, and you shouldn't have this flag too often, but the fix is just fixing the individual record. The other flag that we see most often is hire date must be within 1 month of the pay period begin date. This is just our flag. This is our system saying, hey, why is this person have a contributions only starting now when their hire date is several months back? So this is most often with part-timers who just became eligible. In these cases, you will just go into that record and change their hire date to the retirement eligibility date, and then just leave us a note on what you did and revalidate your report, and it should clear the suspension. If you're not seeing any flags show up and it's not letting you confirm your report, revalidate. It's like the reload button. The first thing we do when somebody calls us is that's what we do to your report. If you're still not getting any flags that pop up, most likely it is your employer contribution rate. Just go check your math. The employer contribution needs to be 101% match of the employee contributions. Next, John. There we go. Hours. And I know these next couple slides, I know not all of these flags show for you guys. These are all flags that show for us, and we're going to be asking you questions. Um, I don't know why all these flags don't show for you, because when I talked to IT, he said they should be, but I know I have heard multiple enough to know that they don't all show for you. So, um, but just these, I'm just letting you know these are the information that we are going to be looking for. So if you are aware of any issues, you can preemptively talk to us and we'll get these settled quickly. Any person that has over 300 hours reported is going to trigger a flag. Um, if that information is true, just give us a quick note in the comment box on if it's extra duty hours, coaching hours, what reason that they're over 300 hours, because it is quite a lot of hours. We're just making sure that that is indeed correct. This flag is here to catch errors, because there's been several times where I've asked somebody about this and they're like, oh crap, it tracked something I didn't want it to, so I have to go and redo a bunch of stuff. So this is a useful flag that is helpful for catching errors. Um, Anytime that you have contributions listed with hours as 0, um, we're going to need to know why. Most often this is maternity or leave of absences, and you're going to get these 2 questions from us, because we need to know what's going on with this person. Most often in these cases, we're going to be looking for adjustments later. So this is for our records, making sure we know why this is happening, because this is generally not something that should be seen on a report. All right, the termination date flags. This is basically there to make sure that the termination date on your wage and contribution report matches your non-con. Or if you don't have a non-con, it's just to tell you to go do one. With this new missing non-con section of the portal, this may be flags that will no longer exist, because we are discussing removing the termination date part of the wage and contribution report and just relying on non-cons. So this may not be a thing in the future, but right now this is just an extra feature to make sure that non-cons get submitted, because they are required upon termination. Um, if you see these flags, just go make sure that the non-con submitted and is matching and everything's correct. And these flags won't clear, but it should never suspend your report, so they should be good to go. Adjustments. I know they're always a sticking point, and they're a pain for us as well. Why we need them? It is because statute is very clear that hours and wages need to be reported when worked, not when they're paid out. So anytime that when you're paid out does not match when they're actually worked, we have to do adjustments to correctly reflect when they should have been reported. Um, the school is responsible for filling out adjustments and entering them on their wage and contribution report, um, and then sending us the adjustment form to document what they did anytime that they are doing adjustments. In the materials for this PowerPoint, there should be 2 different files that I have prepared. One is like a walkthrough on how to do adjustments, start to finish, with a couple maternity examples at the end, and then just a packet of just a bunch of different adjustment scenarios that is just for your reference if you always have questions on how to fill it out. Hopefully those adjustment scenarios will help show you how to fill out adjustments for your something that you may have to do in the future. If you don't get those, if you're not getting that information, let us know, because we can forward that to you. And then just let me know, are they helpful? We have a nice shiny new manual update in the last week or two, and the adjustment section has not been updated. So if these new material is more helpful, then maybe we can add some of these into the manual for next year. Just let us know, are they helpful, not helpful, that kind of things, because I know adjustments are always kind of a sticking point. And for, yeah, adjustments are true adjustments in our system. So we're not replacing anything on our system. So if you have, say, you reported 50 hours for somebody and it should be 80 hours, you're going to put 30 hours for your adjustment. You're not going to put 80, because on our side, what it shows is going to show you the original amount plus the adjustment amount. So on our system, it's going to show 50, and then the next line over, it's going to show 30, and it's the total amount of 80. That is why adjustments are adjustments. They are not replacements. When you need to do adjustments, if you've reported excess contributions, such as you had a stipend that should not have been reported, um, you will go back within 1 year of the date of discovery. Um, that is like if you just noticed here in this last June and you've been doing it for the last 2 years, then you're only going to go back to May of the previous year. Um, Anything that was reported in excess, the employee contributions of that will get refunded to the member whenever they ask for a distribution, but it is not part of their retirement calculation. Any employer contributions in that time will be forfeited. Um, any missed contributions, this is when they should have had contributions reported, but they did not. Those will always need to be submitted. 2 months ago, 3 years ago, 20 years ago, we always need to do adjustments for those because those missing contributions always need to get submitted. Ineligible contributions, this is kind of messy. Contact us when you have these kind of situations because it kind of depends on the scenarios. But in general, these will also always need to get submitted. Um, those will always get returned to the member, always. Yeah, this is the adjustment form. You guys should all be familiar with this. It gives you a template on how to enter the adjustments into our system. It gives us documentation on what is going on, what happened. If for any reason you have adjustments that are past these 12 lines here, we have a high capacity form that you can ask for as needed. Things to be aware of: the new contribution rate. If you look on our website now, there's 2 adjustment forms, and you will have to be aware of when you're doing adjustments because depending on when you're doing adjustments, you may have multiple forms now because there is different adjustment forms for the different contribution rates. So please be aware of this. Don't let this trip you up and give you more work at the end. Be aware of what the contribution rate is of the pay periods that you are adjusting. It needs to be the right contribution rate on the forms and entered online as well. Can you click once more, John? There you go. This here is just kind of an example of how to fill it out. This yellow box is going to be the reporting period which you are adjusting. You need to separate out each reporting period. So you can only do May 1 to May 31 or June 1, June 31. You cannot do May 1 to June 30. It has to be each line for each pay period. This blue box here is the hours that were previously reported. So my example earlier, if you reported 50 hours and it should have been 80, 50 hours will go in this blue box, 80 hours will go into the purple box, and the red box is going to be the difference. That difference is the adjustment amount, and that is the adjustment amount that will go on our website when you are entering the adjustment. Once more. Same thing with the compensation is about the same for the hours. So the yellow box here is going to be the compensation that was previously reported. And the blue box is what it should have been. So for example, if they had $100 reported and they should have had 150, you'll have 100 in that yellow box, 150 in the blue box, and then the purple box is going to be the difference. And that is the adjustment amount. That is the amount you're going to be entering on our system. And the red box there is going to be the employee contribution amount that should be entered. Again, be aware of the contribution rates when you are doing this. This is the summary of the adjustment report. So the yellow box there is going to be the total employee contributions. The blue box is the total employer contributions, and the purple box is the total adjustment amount. On our website, the employee contributions, you can see the total employee contributions under your report summary. The employer contributions is the amount you will need to add into your monthly total employer contributions. And the purple one is just so you were aware of the cost of the adjustments, whether you're getting a credit or having to owe us more money. This red box is going to be the wage and contribution report you are entering adjustments on. So say you're doing adjustments for the May pay period, but you are on your July report. You're going to put the July report here at the bottom in the red. When you're entering the adjustments, make sure you do it after you have uploaded your monthly report, checked all the flags, done everything else you need to do with your monthly report aside from confirming it. If you do adjustments, if you upload your adjustments before doing your monthly report, it will not let you. There is no workaround. The system just says no. So save yourself time, upload your monthly report, do all of your normal stuff, and then enter your adjustments. And again, here at the bottom is showing you what the report summary is. That $14.95 there is the employee contributions. So it should match that one section in the form in the previous slide. After you've done everything, revalidate your report and you should be good to confirm your report. And this is just a template on which of the areas of the adjustment form should be entered in online. Because again, I said it acts as a template for you when entering adjustments online. Online, where you see record type, you need to make sure that shows adjustment, not regular. Because our system will not allow you to change the date range for the adjustments if you just have regular there. So make sure you change that to adjustment. In that reporting, the date range there is going to be the reporting period that you were adjusting. And if you're adjusting any hours, it's going to be that yellow column. If it's any contributions, it'll be that red column, and the employee contribution should match that farthest column in blue. This is how you contact us here in accounting. I want to stress this email. It is the best way to contact us because you can write this email down and you should always be able to use it. Doesn't matter who's not there that day or if we have any turnover in the future, just use that email. It's going to be the best way to contact us. If you want to reach us by phone, there's our phone numbers there. And I should be done here.
Great job, Sammy. All right, so good stuff from the world of accounting there. All right, so you're going to notice myself and my partner here, Nick, we're popping up here. We're going to talk to you briefly about some legislative changes. Just kind of let you know what our team does. Nick and I, we go around the state and we talk to actual potential retirees and we do their retirement seminars. And our goal is to answer as many questions for them up front so they don't go to you asking quite so many questions. So if you do have any questions, obviously you always can reach out to internal auditing. But if you want to see more materials like updates to our websites, different videos, let us know. Nick and I are always trying to create new material to try to make it as easy as possible on everybody, not just for the retirees, but also for yourself. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. My part, I'm just going to talk to a few slides, and the first thing I want to talk about is some updated wording. All right, you might recall last year when we had LB 198. Basically you got a little bit of homework. LB 198, the part we were concerned about had to do with verifying an employee's eligibility to come work for the school system. And there, you might recall there was a list of approved documents that you could use to verify somebody's eligibility. Now, one of the gaps we realized was in that wording is that some of these documents they could actually expire, and it might be too much of a burden to ask somebody from a foreign country to go back to their home country to update that document to get a new expiration date, when in fact they could actually get an extension on those documents. And so what they put into legislation is saying that yes, if somebody gets an extension, we can use those documents. Now, it is still incumbent upon you to make sure you keep good records of that, showing that that document has in fact been extended. Now, the other change I want to talk about on this slide is one additional document that can be used to verify somebody's eligibility, and that'll be a learner's permit. We can now use a learner's permit to verify somebody's eligibility. So that's the big thing about this slide. Now this next one was kind of good news for a member, and it's just basically giving everybody more time to plan for retirement. Previously, if somebody wanted to retire, they submitted their application. They couldn't do that any sooner than 120 days. All right. So that's why typically would say we tell the members at least 5 months, because it takes time for it to get mailed in there and get processed. So it was 120 days. Now we've changed it to 270 days, which is close to 9 months. So basically, when somebody starts their school year, if they know if this is their last year, they can go ahead and apply for retirement almost at the very beginning of the school year. So that's something new for our members. And the last thing I'll be talking to you before I hand this over to Nick is about the 20-hour formula. Now, this is important. We want to make sure that we are all on the same sheet of music because there are over, 265 schools out there, and we don't want any real variation because the IRS is going to audit us to make sure that we are managing the plan correctly. So we want to protect all the retirees. So what's this magic formula? All right, so we know that when somebody gets hired on, if we know that they're going to work 20 hours or more, that's in their contract, then we can go ahead and sign them up for mandatory contributions. And, that's going forward. And I won't get into too many details because Vanessa's got some scenarios to go for with you on that one. But the other scenario we have is somebody that comes in, let's say less than 20, or maybe it's a unknown amount, right? But if in a 12-month period during that school year, if out of 3 of those months, that employee averages 20 hours per week in those 3 months, then after that point, they become eligible and they have mandatory contributions going forward for the length of their employment, even if they reduce hours. So this is really, really important stuff. Now, as somebody that's talking to retirees and they really like to talk about reemployment, that's where things get really, really sticky. And we have to keep in mind those buckets, which again, Vanessa's going to be talking about later. But if there's a violation, then there could be financial ramifications. And this, I think it all revolves around this. So let's talk about that formula real quick. So to calculate it, what you do is you add up the total amount of hours somebody's worked in a month. Then you divide that by the number of days in the month. Now keep in mind, several months of the year, like right now, we're in July, there's going to be 31 days. So you divide that by 31 days. But hey, come September, there's only 30 days in that month. So you're going to divide by 30. So once you make that divide the number of hours by the number of days in a month, that's going to get your daily average. And then there's 7 days in a week. So then we multiply that daily average by 7. Then we figure out that's what we get for the average hours they worked for that week. So let's make sure we're all using the exact same formula. Now again, I've kind of already given you advance notices, like we're going to go into some different scenarios where we want to try to make sure there's no violations and nobody's having to pay anything back. Now, with that being said, this is a perfect time to hand things off to my partner, Nick. Nick, you want to pick it up from here?
Thanks, John. I see also just so that we address it in the Q&A, several of you saying that you hadn't yet received the slides through email because you weren't able to download them when you joined. We will make sure you get those and have access to them. Vanessa's been replying to you. I know John has them as well, and we will be sure to get them to you. So just in case you were worried about that, nervous, we'll get you those materials. No need to fret about that. So I'll take over here, and this first thing I'll talk about, as you can see, revolves around overpayment relief. This is a very new and very untested provision that is being added, and as such, it will likely require some refining, and it will likely require some editing as it goes along, and as more people apply for this and go through this process. What this process is for members who have been notified that they must repay an overpayment of their benefits, they can request relief from repaying that overpayment, provided two main things. The first of these is that this overpayment must be inadvertent, meaning it cannot be the member's fault whatsoever. What this might look like is, say, there's an administrative or calculation error on our end. Say somehow an extra zero gets added to a member's monthly benefit. The member didn't know that. They thought they were receiving the amount they were supposed to in good faith. That is not their fault for receiving that overpayment, and as such, they should not be punished by having to repay that amount because, once again, that was not their fault. Now, say they knew that was happening, they were trying to game the system maybe they're trying to intentionally misreport something where they knew that they were getting too much or they knew that they were trying to find a loophole, that would not be an inadvertent payment. And as such, they would not qualify for this overpayment relief. So just to reiterate, the first thing that must be true for a member to apply for this is that they must be an inadvertent overpayment where it is not their fault at all. Once that has been established, we then kind of move to this second, which is that it must pose a significant financial hardship for the member to repay. Now, if you're reading that, you kind of might see that seems a little subjective. That doesn't seem super black and white and a little bit more gray. And you'd be right, because it is. It is a bit more subjective. The way that this process will work is the member will gather together their proof, their evidence that it is not their fault and that it would be pretty hard for them to repay this overpayment. And then they submit all that information to the PERB through this application. The PERB from there makes their decision independently on a case-by-case basis. That's where that posing a significant financial hardship comes into play because it will be a case-by-case basis per member based upon the information, the proof, and evidence that they provide in their application. Moving forward, as I mentioned as I started this slide, this will probably get refined a bit more and made a little bit more clear. But for now, this is how the guidelines will be, and applications will be available early September, starting around September 3rd. Members will be able to take advantage of this. The last thing I will note, and it's the bottom text, big, bold, all that, it's that there are no guarantees that relief will be provided just because a member does meet those conditions and applies. This is not some sort of get out of jail free card. You're like playing Monopoly. This is not something that should be advertised as 100% reliable. It is not a guarantee, and so please don't treat it as such. Now we'll move on to the next slide here. And this slide is another pretty simple one, but just a nice and convenient one, similar to the retirement application. What this is for the instances where members do pass after retiring and receiving benefits, and they have in their annuity option an option for receiving lump sum payments to their survivors, to their beneficiaries. How it used to work in the past is that in this instance, if there were multiple survivors that payments were having to go out to, these payments had to be made all together, meaning everyone had to get their poop in a group, so to say, or get all of their information put in before anyone could get payments. So how I like to say it is if Uncle John here, he got his stuff in, he was responsible, he did great, but then I'm over here, the young guy that's being lazy, not getting my information in, not getting my paperwork in, then Uncle John would be having to wait on my lazy butt. But now that is not how it is. Instead, payments can be made individually and they don't have to be all together, meaning Uncle John can get his payment because he was responsible, and I can just still be lazy if I really want to, and he won't have to be waiting on me. That just really eliminates delay, makes it more convenient, better for everyone. An additional change here is this another bump up in the amount of days. It used to just be 60 days this could be requested. Now it's up to 90, just as another convenient thing. And the last thing that I'll touch on, me and John don't have a whole lot for you today, is pre-retirement education, the seminars. As John mentioned, we go to the seminars. We love the seminars. We just recently kind of got out of the school seminar season. It was our first one. We were a little bit new, and it was really great to learn. One thing that we did learn, one common problem with the seminars, is the attendees thinking that they had to cut out early. We'd have them be really engaged, really love the morning session. Then after lunch, they'd say, oh, I need to go back to work. Oh, I need to go do this, go do that, whatever it might be. We just want to reiterate to you, to reiterate to them that if at an all-day seminar, the employees, the attendees, they get that full 8 hours away from work paid, meaning they need to be there for the full 8 hours. They can't just cut out early. We understand stuff does happen, emergencies happen, that is okay. But they shouldn't be being encouraged to come back to work. They shouldn't take that as a, ooh, I can fill in some appointments here. No, if they're getting paid the full 8 hours and they need to attend the full 8 hours. However, say that there's some, maybe they don't want to be there for the full 8 hours. That's just too long of a day. They'd rather do just the NPERS information and not the additional retirement information that we cover. That is an option available to them through 4-hour half-day sessions and online webinars like you guys are in right now. Those 4-hour half-day sessions don't happen too frequently, but the webinars we try and host a couple throughout the year, a good amount. If, like I said, there's someone who doesn't want to attend the full 8 hours, those are available to them. However, that additional retirement information is not covered, and as such, they should check out our website and YouTube channel to watch the information on Social Security and estate planning and Medicaid and all of that good stuff. And they should try and do that within 48 hours of either their half day or online webinar. The last thing I'll touch on here is kind of the first bullet point. We kind of skipped around a little. Employees can attend up to 2 days or 16 hours worth of educational sessions. What this means is employee could choose, hey, I want to do an all-day seminar like 5 years before my retirement, and then another one the year before. That's great. Say they only want to do one full-day seminar. Say they want to do none. That is great. They are not required to attend any of these. They just have up to 2 days or 16 hours that they do get paid to attend them. So encourage them to use them. Me and John, it keeps us busy, keeps us having a job, and we love meeting them. However, they are not required to. So that kind of concludes my portion, me and John's portion. We're now going to let Vanessa take the main stage here and have some fun talking about all the internal audit stuff. So Vanessa, you have the floor.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and
Perfect.
stop sharing.
I think I am sharing now. Is that correct?
You are in the control, Vanessa. It is your show now.
Perfect. Okay, so
Everybody, I will get those emails out right now.
I did get the emails out to everybody that I answered to. So everybody that you see, I think there was another question in there that I didn't get to. And it doesn't look like I'm able to have the question and answers popped out as I'm presenting.
You
So
can.
I can.
There's like two little arrows, like it's points in the upper right-hand corner and lower left-hand corner, and that should expand it for you. See at the very top of your screen. I can walk down there and I'll show it for you, okay?
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
that would be awesome.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
right down there.
Okay, sounds good. While he is doing that, I hope everybody can see my screen. When we did presentations this year, it was much more of a question answer based and a lot more of a conversation. So it's a little harder to do that in a webinar. I do want to continue to do that if we can. So as much as we can, I will tell you when to use the chat. I know that typically we say do your questions and answers in that Q&A portion, and that is what we want you to do. We can keep track, make sure that we're answering your questions. We can get back to you at the end. It will print it all out. We can make sure sometimes when people ask questions, it's very specific and it requires a lot of back and forth, and that we have to answer, get answers to different questions. And so that just takes a lot of time. So if we have a very specific question, we may ask that you send us an email, or we may not address that in the webinar, just so you know. But otherwise, we have a lot of poll questions today. We want some communication back and forth. Give me just a second. John is here. See if he can go right here, right here. Okay. And they're back on. Great. Thanks so much, John. All right. Boy, we love technology when it works, right? Okay, let me get these up so I can kind of monitor. I do have, as John and Nick said, we have Eva and Aaron that are going to be answering questions as well. So hopefully that will be helpful along the way. So for those of you that filled out the survey before this started, just know that that's what our presentation is going to be on. I sent out a survey preliminary to those that had registered. John sent it out again. And so if you registered late, you might not have got that survey. So that's okay. I think that everybody that had questions on the survey, I think they're pretty general. And anybody here today are going to have those same questions. But just so you know, that's what we are going to be going over. Hey, I just noticed I'm not sharing my video either. Let's do that. All right. Let's go through here. Who is attending the workshop on who answered those survey questions? So 39, I think it was 139 total that are here, that had registered today. A little over 100 are actually here. 39 of you filled it out. So again, thank you so much. For those of you that didn't fill it out, still thank you for being here. I know I say this every time, but I'm gonna say it again. I know that retirement is such a small piece of what you do. I know that your job is all encompassing and that you have to deal with so much. So I'm just thankful and grateful that you're here. We will talk a lot today too. Oh, looks like there's a poll question out there. We will talk a lot. I don't think we were at the poll question part yet, but that's okay. So it looks like there's a poll question on there. How long have you been in your position? We'll give you all just a minute to answer that. For those that answered on the survey, this is what it looked like. But we like to know who we're talking to and alter the presentation that way. So what I thought was interesting, there was maybe not a huge portion that was there less than a year, but there's about a third in overall on the survey. John, I think your mic is on maybe. I can hear somebody whispering. Okay, so about a third have been here for less than 5 years. That's huge, right? Anybody heard of that bell curve? You know, when you start something, boy, you think you think you get a good grasp and you know it all and we're good. And then all of a sudden you're there for longer, a little bit longer, and you realize, whew, I don't really know as much as I thought I knew. And then we take retirement and how it changes every single year. So the legislature will go through and they will make law changes, and it changes eligibility, it changes termination, changes contribution rates. All of the changes that they make over across the street then affect how the process owners have to do their stuff. So even though, you know, there's a good portion that have been here over 10 years, that doesn't mean that they still know all of the things, right? Because this is ever evolving, it's ever changing. So it looks like we've got a good amount that have actually answered it. John, do you want to close the poll, or did you already and show the results? 65 of 116 attendees have responded.
Yes, all right. So we have here are the results. 65 of 116 have responded, and it looks like 51 did not answer. Looks like we've got 9 are less than 1 year, 13 are 1 to 3 years, 10 are 3 to 5 years, 14 5 to 10 years, and 19 greater than 10 years.
All right. Well, thank you for those that responded. This is going to be helpful when we go through the scenarios too. So we're going to pop up poll questions. Again, it's a little more difficult on a webinar format that we can't have a lot of open discussion, but we'll try to use that chat. I want people to see that people have the same questions, that people have the same stumbling blocks, and that for every single question that we have, we'll have an equal number of people that answer it one way versus the other way. So I think that's important, just to understand you're not alone. It's a safe place to ask questions. We are on the same team here, right? So NPERS gets audited 4 times a year from the state auditors. The school plan in particular gets audited once every year. What the state auditors do is go out to the employers and they ask the employers questions. And anytime they find that there is something that's not in compliance with rules, regs, guidance, statute, then it is an audit finding for NPERS. So said in other words, when an employer doesn't do something that aligns with the plan documents, it's an NPERS finding, which is why we do these, right? Which is why audit comes to these. I've been in this position for almost 5 years. The first year was an auditor auditing school plans, county plans. And I found out really quickly just how hard your plan was. And so I think it's really important knowing that when the state auditors audit NPERS and the school employers get things wrong, it's our audit finding, that we're a team. And so how can we help you? So in this, in conclusion of this, I will also send out an email to everybody about some things, some general things that were found over the course of all of the workshops that we had. This is the 5th and last one that we're doing. And hopefully from that, we can get from you, what tools can we provide? How can we make this easier? What can we do for you to help? This survey, I will say, there was a lot of people that said, you know, make the statutes easier. Well, NPERS can't do that. NPERS is the plan administrator. We administer 7 plans. Okay, the school plan is just one of them. So we are not able to go to the legislature and do things, specific things for the plan. That would be for you all. If you want your plan documents easier, if you want these statutes easier, rules, regs, laws, go to your senators and ask that be the case, right? I would like nothing more if we can make these plan documents easier. They're easier for you to follow. They're easier for us to audit. Everybody is better in compliance. We keep a qualified plan. It's just easier that way. So know that that is one thing that came from the survey abundantly over and over, not something that NPERS can do. We are tasked with administering the plan, right? So we need to make sure the plan stays qualified. For IRS, we need to make sure that everybody receives a definitely determinable benefit, which means that their benefit is contingent upon the plan documents and the formulas used and not per employer discretion. So statute outlines a lot of things. IRS guidelines outlines a lot of things, that there's a lot of gray. And so the administrator of the plan then is tasked and given the authority in statute then to promulgate the rules and regs and the guidance on how these retirement plans will work. And when we're looking at eligibility, when we're looking at termination. So that's why it's important we're all consistent. Our message is consistent. You apply things consistently. And that's why we're going to do these. And we're going to go over the tools that we already have. But again, just side note at the end of this, if there are tools that you need, please let us know. All right, so poll question. How long have you been in your position? We're going to give you a little more time for this one. I would like to know how long everybody has been here. Oh, and we already did that one, actually. We did that one a little early, John, didn't we?
Yeah, my bad.
No,
I
that's
was running
okay.
back here to the office. So we want to
No,
run
no,
it
no.
again, or you want me to close it out?
No, we can just close it out. Let's just keep going here.
Okay.
Are you the only person responsible for retirement at your district? So this is what I think is really, really interesting, right? Look at that. It is almost 3/4 that this is the only person that does retirement at your place. This is huge. If you're not using the manual, if you don't get the training, if you didn't have proper training when you came on, how do you know what to do? Right? The statutes are hard, they're complicated, the rules are hard, they're complicated. So how can we help you? Let us know. That's what this is. Although this is only a quarter, right, of those that there's more than one person, what we're finding is that that may be just as hard or harder, because although you have multiple people that are doing it, you're doing different facets of it. So one person deals with the payroll, and so the compensation, maybe the hours. One person deals with the eligibility, HR when they're onboarding them, and having those people talk together. So how can we help you? So poll question, today, are you the only one responsible? It looks like John's already got that going. Let's see, we still have 50 that haven't answered. If you can get on there, we're going to have crowd participation today as much as we can. We still have 43 that haven't answered here. Are you the only one responsible for retirement? Who are we talking to today? Who do we have on here? All right, John, it looks like the answers have kind of died out. Do you want to close it out and share the results? All right, it looks like we have 78 out of 116 that responded. With that, 47 does it alone, 26 don't do it alone, and 4 is sometimes. So that is pretty common. So again, at the end, big takeaway from here is how can we help you? What can we do? What tools can we have available for you to help you know the rules and as they change every year? This was just from the survey. And I like this slide. This was part of the survey. It helps me to know who we're talking to as well. Full employer audits are about 8.5 years apart, and we are trying to change that. So if you've been audited lately, you know that we are using an audit software. Hopefully that will streamline the process substantially. But over and beyond that, this last year, we started a new member review. And what that was is we just pulled it out. The new member review, we pulled that out of the employer audit. And we, when I say we, it's Aaron. He looked at 265 schools and every single new member. So I think there was, give or take, about 4,500 new members into the school plan in the fiscal year ending 24. If the member had reported 1,000 hours or over, then he didn't look at them. It was reasonable to say, right? You can't get any more than 1 year of service credit. 1,000 hours of service hours equates to 1 year of service credit. And so those were reasonable. You probably belonged in the plan. So, but anybody under that he looked at, and that was about half of them. And within that, there was only 77, give or take, members that had findings on them, that had issues, that didn't comply. So it was a 3% error rate, which is huge. I think it's great. Such a small error rate shows that people are getting it. We're getting eligibility. We are understanding how and when somebody goes into the plan. This is going to be something that we continue to do every year. So instead of waiting 8.5 years and having that test be in an employer audit when you're dealing with so much, the employer audit is so big, right? That hopefully then we piece it out and we can touch it every year. And then we have that contact with you every year. And we start to realize we're on the same team. We're looking at this every year. What can we do? How can we help you? So poll question, just for those that are here today, have you been involved in an NPERS employer audit? So there was only 39 of you that answered. Let's see who we have on today. And by employer audit, I mean that full employer audit. If you don't recall, that's probably a good thing. All right, the answers are coming in pretty fast. Thanks, everybody. And we'll make this as interactive as it can be. So far, we've got 33 yes, 31 no. We're about half and half so far. All right. Answers are still coming in. Give you just a couple more seconds here. Let's give it 10 more seconds so we can close it out. All right, John, can we go ahead and close it out and show those results, please? Great, so it's about half and half. We have for those that actually answered, so thank you again. Thank you for helping us. 36 have been involved and 33 have not. All right, hopefully at the end of this, you will understand that an NPERS audit is going to be a little different than your typical audit. Is it a lot? Yes. Are we checking your work, which sometimes can make somebody defensive, or it can sometimes just make you not feel good, especially if there's things that are wrong? Yes. However, we try to make it an educational session. In the very, very beginning of your audit, we will do a kickoff meeting that provides just a lot of one-on-one education, actually. And in that, we can ask questions, you ask questions, we learn what your controls processes are. We invite your superintendent. We like them to be on the call with you because we want them to hear the same things that you are hearing. We understand that you maybe are the process owner for retirement, but maybe you're not a decision maker, right? And so you need others to hear what you're hearing. And so that's why we do that. At the end, at the conclusion of it, when we go over the report, we will go over everything that was right, everything that we didn't find even something that we could give you guidance on, you know, things that there was no findings, no, you nailed it. And if you communicated with us and you gave us the information, we're also going to tell your superintendent, like, kudos to you, thank you. We understand that this audit took a lot of time. But you were incredibly helpful. You shared information, you got back to us quickly. We will make sure to do that as well. But then your superintendent hopefully can hear the things that you're hearing, or your HR directors, your payroll directors. Every school is a little different depending on how big you are, right? But those decision makers then hopefully can start to just have that conversation with us as well. And it doesn't seem like you're just pushing it. So the rest of this presentation is really just based on those survey results, okay? How I structured it was I asked just a couple of get to know you questions. Who is it that we're talking to? I also was just very interested, you know, are you the only person? How long have you been here? Types of things. But the rest were just a scale. So I threw out some topics on the survey and said from 1 to 5, you know, what's the hardest? What do you struggle with the most? What don't you struggle with? Right. And so the 1s and 2s, the blues and reds on there are the least. So I don't struggle with it that much, or, hey, this is the one component of retirement that I think I've got it nailed down. And so when you see the blues and the reds on this survey, we're not going to spend a lot of time on them. When you see the oranges, the 3s, like the I'm not so sure I understand. Maybe I do. Maybe I'd like a little more information. When the greens and purples start to go up, that's this is really hard, and I'm just not sure what to do. So that's when you're going to see us focus a little more time. But that's all we're going to do. We're just going to go through the survey questions that I asked you. If you asked a question in those surveys, thank you. You will see your question on this presentation because we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what are the questions you have. That's how we can help you, right? The first workshop that I ever went to was 2021. So I had started January 2021 and performed audits for the school plan for 6 months, had a bunch of audit findings, and okay, let's talk about these audit findings. The next year came 2022, and boy, we were focused on LB 147, right? That was the big legislation change. It made a lot of things easier, right? It provided you 8 days of substitute service in a month. There was no intermittent. What does intermittent mean? What does day by day mean? All that gray area, it really fleshed that out and gave you get a concrete 8 days of substitute and or voluntary service in a calendar month during your 180-day separation period. That was great. What it did do was highlight some other confusion where some schools kept subs in the plan, some took them out because they were a sub, and ultimately back then termination of all regular service was affected 2 things. So stopping contributions or taking a distribution was contingent upon performing that 180-day separation period. That caused a lot of confusion for some people. They didn't either realize it was or they didn't agree. LB 198 came around to really clarify. distinct separation of termination rules for those that are taking a distribution and those that are not, right? So those that are taking a distribution, they have that 180-day separation period. Those that are not do not. 180-day separation period only now is attached to taking a distribution. It's not attached to if you're just trying to stop contributions. So then so we went over that, LB 147. Then the next year, I tried to make it as simple as I could. If you came to those workshops, we talked a lot about buckets. And I'll be honest with you, we're going to talk a lot about buckets today. How can we make the information easy to understand, easy to retain, easy to navigate? Last year, Caitlin came on, did amazing, and threw the book at you, right? Every single piece of information we tried to give you. So this year now, we want to make sure, let's have a conversation. And I think this is typically how it's going to be from here on out. I think that the conversations we've had have sparked some great things for us to know where people are struggling with. It helps you as well. And so next year, if you can make it to an in-person webinar, I would suggest it. It really allows for that open dialogue. We'll see how the webinar goes. I'm sure it will be great. People do this all the time, right? People are moving more and more to video and webinar, and that's great. There also is just something about that human connection and being able to talk face to face. So here we go. Establishing eligibility upon hire. That was the first topic. And that was, okay, how hard is this? You can see, I mean, tons of reds. Reds are all the way up there. Blues are all the way up there. Like, we got this. We know this information. We're good. So the orange, a little bit higher, but green and purple way down. So we're not going to spend a lot of time with this. We will touch on a couple of things because these are what came up in the new member review. So we're going to have a couple of questions to you all to make sure that we're all understanding eligibility upon hire. All right, so a poll question. Greg has a work agreement that he is hired to work in the cafeteria for no more than 30 hours a week. Assuming Greg meets all other eligibility requirements, is he eligible to participate in the plan? So for those of you that are new, or for those of you that don't know what all other eligibility requirements mean, let me just give you some things. We're going to say that Greg is 18 or older. We're going to say that Greg is a US citizen or lawfully present. And we are saying that Greg is a regular employee, okay? So we know all of those things about Greg. So poll question is up. Greg has a work agreement that he is hired to work in the cafeteria for no more than 30 hours a week. Do we put him in? And we're going to hang on to this one a little bit. I didn't give you an easy out on it depends. We want a yes or no answer, right? Because this is your job. We've got to find out, is Greg eligible? So you answer how you think. Don't worry about numbers. Don't worry about how everybody else is answering. You just put in your answer. We've got 56 people left. I sure hope people today, I know with webinars, sometimes I turn on the webinar, it turns into background noise, right? And I still do my work. Today, we're learning, okay? We're having discussions as much as we can on a webinar. That's the only way that we are going to be able to understand this. We still have 45 left. Boy, that's about the number of people that don't answer. So in person, I wouldn't let people just not answer. We're going to give it a little bit more time. Can we get any of those other 45 people to put an answer in? Hopefully we're not just background noise. Oh, we got one more person. All right, all right. Oh, another one. Here we go. See if we can get to 40. Anybody else? Can you hear me? I'm a background noise. We're almost there. Boy, I don't know, John. I don't think we're going to get there. All right, John, just close it out for me.
Yeah, we've got, I think 26 haven't started, so we got 74 finished. All right, let's close it. Let's give it some poll results. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you, John. We have 65 people that said yes, John would be eligible, and we had 9 people that said no. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so for those of you that said no, I'm gonna turn my head, and I try to look right at you, right? But there are so many screens and so many different things. So my chat box is over here. I'm gonna turn my head. For somebody that said no, can you put in the chat why you said no? Because it's overwhelmingly yes. And don't, this is a safe place. We're not saving this, and for people that answered wrong, we're not going to start an audit on you. That there is none of that. Okay. No more doesn't mean that they will meet the 20-hour minimum consistently. Need to track hours to ensure 20. Said no more than 30 hours. No more than 30 hours does not mean he is working 20, because no guarantee he is working 30 hours. Track hours. Look at that. All right, all right. So for those of you that said yes, why'd you say yes? Thank you all for participating. This is great. We can make it interactive, John, even on the webinar. We got it. All right, for those of you that said yes, why did you say yes? I don't see anything in here yet. Or maybe the answers to the no changed your mind. He was hired at 30. The word eligible. Chanel, Katie, Jennifer, Jamie, thank you guys for answering. Most people will work the allowed hours, therefore I assumed he would work more than 20, but less than 30. I've gotten that answer a lot. It is assumed they are hired for 30 hours, therefore part of the plan. More than likely he will meet the hours. This is great. All right. So for those that said yes, the 2 answers I've consistently got are exactly what you gave me. Typically, if it says no more than, man, at my school, that means they're working 30, right? Or we look at, it says 30. For those of you that said no, and you said, well, it says no more than, you're right. So this came up in the new member review. And Eva and Aaron, if I can get, I'm gonna quit looking at that chat. So if there's something in there that somebody says that you want me to address, if you just shout out to me on here, interrupt me, we can make this interactive. We don't need to be perfect, right? We're all human. Let me know that I need to know, but I'm gonna be looking at the screen now.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you. So what's the minimum? If it says no more than 30, the minimum could be what? 0, right? We don't know the minimum. And so the minimum to meet eligibility is 20. So if the work agreement says no more than, and you're the reporting agent, so I need to know if I put them in, you either A, don't put them in, and you track hours to make sure they meet eligibility. Now, if they're going to work 30 hours because it says no more than, then in 3 months in a fiscal year, boom, they've met eligibility, they're in, right? Or if you know they're going to be working 30, then maybe it's an email back to who hired them, and you say, hey, I need to establish eligibility. Eligibility minimum is 20 hours. Is this something, typically, if it says no more than 30, then they work 30? Is this something that we maybe need to think about changing their work agreement to? Because is 30 on there so that they don't meet the other benefits threshold, right? Is there a reason for the 30? And an email exchange can help you navigate, do I put them in or don't I? If there's any other questions on that, you let me know. You pop in, still use the Q&A for your questions, because then they can look and we can address, we can make sure those questions are being answered. The chat, again, is when I ask it, then give us that feedback and we can do that. But if you have a question, make sure you're using that Q&A. All right, so here's the next poll question. Krista has a contract stating she will work 15 to 25 hours a week. Assuming Krista meets all other eligibility requirements, is she eligible to participate in the plan? Again, let's give those 3 things to you. That means Krista is 18. It means she's a US citizen or lawfully present. And I mean, she's a regular employee. So now we have a contract, even not a work agreement, that says 15 to 25 hours. Poll is up. Do you put her in or don't you? This is your job, so you got to make a decision. Yes or no? We're going to give you a little more time again to answer this. I love the participation. Thank you.
Hi, Vanessa. You mind if I jump in here real quick?
No, you do it.
In regards to everybody's written responses, everybody, we'd like you to if Vanessa asks you to type out your explanation, please use the chat box. And when you actually have a question that you need us to answer, like everybody's asking for slides, use the Q&A for that, because when you, on the Q&A, we have to respond to those. And if you're responding to Vanessa's answers in there, it still requires us to put something in there. So your responses to Vanessa's questions for clarification, use chat. For questions you have that you need us to respond to, use the Q&A. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, John. You bet. Those question and answers are going to stay on there until we answer them. So when we're doing these poll questions and I say put in the chat, that is the title, put it in the chat. For specific questions that you need an answer to, it's that Q&A. Looks like we're around the same number of respondents.
Yes, we're doing very good. We have 72 finished, 28 not started, and I think some of those count ourselves as well. So you want me to go ahead and close it out?
Awesome. Yeah, you bet. Go ahead, John. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, all
There's those
right.
results.
All right. 15 this time said yes. It kind of looks like the tables are turned, right? 15 said yes, 58 said no, 42 didn't answer. But like John said, there's a lot of us here at NPERS on this webinar right now to help support you. So, okay, for those of you, we're going to start with yes, because since that's the smaller amount this time. For those of you that said yes, why did you say yes? If you said no, don't answer yet. Denise says, again, if there was depends on other factors, I could choose that. Right. No, I did not allow the depends on other factors. Yes or no. But 15 to 25, I would presume the 20-hour average being met and rather err on the side of contributing rather than to miss and have makeup contributions. Gayla says, possibly eligible. Yes, we need to track the hours to be sure. They are eligible, just depends if they track 20 or more hours. I do not want to put no, as it totally varies on what job. Yeah. Would you need to track in our school? They would be on the high end. Okay. So for those of you that said no, why did you say no? I would choose maybe. Linda, I agree. On almost every single question, I would choose maybe. Jenny says, we don't know if they put in 20 or more. We need to track. We need more information on their hours. Jennifer says, need to track the hours to verify first. So here we go. This is the same scenario, right? Again, Eva and Aaron, I'm looking away from that chat. So if there's something on there, you feel free to let me know. This is, we'll work 15 to 25 hours. So what does that mean? That means the minimum is 15. Does that mean the minimum is 20? No. The average of hours, when does that come in? That comes in when you track, right? So we don't expect you to have a crystal ball. We expect you at the time of hire to know what the intention of hours is. If it's 20 or more and they're regular, they meet all the other threshold, right? Then we put them in. If it's less or you don't know, then you track hours. So for this one, we don't know what their minimum is going to be. Their minimum could be 15 every week. And so that doesn't meet the 20 hours. So you track and you put them in. All right, thanks for the participation. So we will go back to those survey questions, those topics on what is hard and what isn't. The classification of employees, we will go over that. This is that buckets. If you came to the workshop 2 years ago, if you have talked to me anytime within the last 2 years since I started using the analogy, we will go over that. It is throughout this presentation. You can see the reds and the blues are really, really high, everything else much lower. And so I guarantee you at the end of this, we will have the classification of employee figured out. Defining substitute service, well, we can see these reds and blues, they go down, right? Yellow starts to go up, and we're here. This is a big one. Defining substitute service can have material, substantial impact on a lot of things. So let's go over this. This is going to be another poll question, but before you answer the poll question, hear me out on what the question is and let me define this, okay? So you as the school have a teacher that is retiring. Now, let me define that. If you've heard me talk all the time, I say we're speaking two different languages, and that's not a bad thing. NPERS has their own language based on statute because the definitions are statutorily defined, right? Even if something is not statutorily defined or there's a contradiction in the statute, right? We went over NPERS is the administrator of the plan. So we then also have the authority to promulgate the rules and regs and guidance on how to do things. Okay, so we need to be looking at what's the retirement definition versus then all schools. And by the way, there's 265 school plan employers. 265. And you all do things differently, right? You define things based on your school. What works for you, what doesn't work for you, what is a substitute, what's an activity driver, but all of that is defined by you. We need to make sure that we are talking retirement language. So retiring is one of those things. What NPERS hears when you say you have somebody retiring is that they're terminating all regular service and they're taking a benefit. But instead of the word retiring, I want you to think about it in taking a distribution, okay? Because so many times somebody doesn't retire. They don't wait until retirement age to take their annuity. What they do is take a rollover or refund. In other words, they're taking money out of their retirement plan, okay? So if somebody is taking a distribution, when you say and hear retiring, we need to change that to taking a distribution. And when we talk about terms as far as termination, we need to think about, is somebody terminating all of their regular employment and are they taking a distribution? So we'll go over that more. That might have been a little bit confusing, but I just want to make sure when we go over this scenario, so you as the school, you have a teacher that's retiring. So for you, that means their retirement age, they're taking their benefit. For us, we're here, they're terminating all regular service, they're going to take a distribution. The member says to you, I want to retire from teaching, but help out at the school, but only where allowed, so I don't jeopardize my retirement, right? So the member verbally tells you, I do want to help, because we all know most of the time that happens, right? You have members that leave, but people work for the schools because they love working for the schools. They love the school, they love the kids, they love everything about it. And they know that you don't have a lot of people to fill the position. So they want to help out, right? So they're retiring. They say, I'll come back and help, but only when it won't jeopardize my retirement. So now you, the school, say, okay, great. Well, we need somebody to fill in to take tickets at the volleyball game tonight. And you call them up. Is this service allowed? John, can you pop up that poll question? You have a teacher that's retiring. For NPERS, that means they're terminating all regular service and requesting a benefit. The member says, I want to retire, but I want to help out only when it will not jeopardize my retirement. School says, okay, we need somebody to take tickets at the volleyball game tonight. Is that service allowed? We've got 58 people finished so far. The answers so far are more half and half, not so much slided one way or the other. Keep those answers coming in.
Yeah,
ahead,
we're
John.
down to 38 not started. So we got 70 are finished, 71 finished. So they're coming in. 74
Perfect.
finished.
John, while we wait for them, did you pop in or Nick pop in the eligibility checklist and the mandatory reporting of extra duty?
You mean as far as an email?
Well, however, we were going to get those links to them.
Oh, no, but I can do that right now.
Perfect.
I'll put those in the chat.
So while people are still responding, I have two things that I am going to use throughout. And it is the NPERS school plan eligibility checklist and a document titled Mandatory Reporting of Extra Duty. As we go through these scenarios, that eligibility checklist will be something that we can utilize, something to look through. You can also find that NPERS eligibility checklist on our website. If you go to the main page, over to the far right, it says employer reporting. There's a drop-down box that says Nebraska schools. Click on that. That will be your page, different than the sign-in. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a box that will, one of the first links is the eligibility checklist. And it looks like that was just popped in there too. So we will be using that. Okay, so it looks like, John, thank you so much for doing that. There's a few with additional explanation needed for poll. Okay, so what, Aaron, can you help me with additional explanation needed for the poll question?
So in the chat there were two that were asking a question. I believe it's in relation to the poll question. Did we allow 180 days waiting period? And another had a question of not yet retired question mark on there. So
Okay, perfect.
just
So
above there.
yeah, awesome. Thanks, Aaron.
Welcome.
Okay, so let's go over that. John, whenever you're ready, I know you are doing multiple things. If you can close it out, perfect, and get the results. Okay, so it looks like 46 said yes, this service is allowed, and 31% said no. And I agree, there are extra questions. But for those of you, let's see, the least amount was on the no, the 31 said no, but it was pretty half and half. Go ahead and a couple of you say why you said no in the chat. Use the chat and tell us why you said no, the service is not allowed. So a lot of you before I asked this question are saying, is this during the 180-day period? And this says assumed it was before the 180-day period. Melissa says once retired, we have to wait 180 days. Vicki says, I assumed we were in the 180-day period and this is not substitute teacher service. All right, Morgan, I assume that since she is retired, she has to wait the waiting period. Jennifer says the hours will still count. It isn't subbing, volunteering. Oh, interesting. Karen, 180-day waiting period for true termination. All right. Thank you. So for those of you that said yes, this service is allowed, go ahead and pop in the chat why we think the service is allowed. Denise, I believe it would count as one of their 8 allowable sub-service days because it is fill-in tonight, but I hesitated on saying yes due to the member stating they wanted to help could be considered prearranged. Oh, good catch. You know what? I have not had one person say that yet. Elizabeth says yes, but it does count towards their 8 days. This is a one-time event, not for the whole season. It is not regular work. It is within the 8 days a month that is allowed to work. She is okay to do this. He wants to retire but has not yet retired. Can work up to 8 days. It's unpaid. Okay. So let's get into this a little bit more here. Let's define substitute service and what that is. This is a statutory definition, okay? So there's no wiggle room here. Every substitute is a temporary employee, and they're hired to fill in for a regular employee that is temporarily absent. All right, so if we are talking about calling someone who, and let me just, based on the comments, let me be a little clearer about the scenario. So she's retiring, that means she is taking her distribution. For the sake of the scenario, we'll say it was during the 180 days. Say she submitted her application and then she terminated. They're now calling her back during her 180 days, okay? It said fill in for ticket taking. Now that can be ambiguous, right? What does your documentation say? So there are some schools that say we have ticket takers assigned. We have regular employees where their job is to take tickets. And so if Sally calls in sick because she couldn't take tickets, then you could call Donna and ask Donna to come in and fill in, and that would be substitute service. Now, somebody in here said substitute teacher service. Let's further define substitute. What you see on the screen is all that's in statute. So it doesn't matter what their job is, right? Typically, I think when substitute was first formed, it was for a teacher, you bet. But because of how it is defined, it doesn't matter if it's a teacher. You could have substitute office, substitute janitorial, substitute food service worker, doesn't matter what it is, substitute lawnmower, right? As long as it's a temporary employee that's filling in for a regular employee that's temporarily absent. So what does your documentation say? If you have ticket takers assigned and this person is filling in for somebody that cannot be there, they are the regular employee that takes tickets, that's substitute service. However, there are a lot of schools that don't do that. There are a lot of schools that have ticket taking more of like an on-call. We just call whoever. There's nobody assigned. It's more of a vacant, right? Is that substitute service? No. We just had this happen. Situation's a little different than in this scenario, but now the member has to pay back $80,000 from the distributions that they received because they did not have a 180-day separation period to make a bona fide termination, right? So you understanding what substitute service means is huge. You have to know, are your members taking a distribution? You don't need to know how much the distribution is, how they're taking it, but you need to remember that A, it doesn't matter what age they are, right? Because this retiring thing, try to get that out of your head. I've heard that a lot over the past 2 weeks. Well, they weren't old enough to retire. Well, that doesn't matter. Donna might be 30 and have been a teacher since she was 21. And now something big in her life happened and she's going to pull all of her money out as a refund. She's going to stop working and pull all of her money out. You've got to know, are you taking a distribution? And if you are, you're only allowed what? 8 days of substitute and or voluntary service in a calendar month during the 180-day separation period. And that's at all school plan employers. So your school plan is a multiple employer plan. Upon eligibility, upon hire, it's treated as a single employer plan, which in other words, let me restate that. When you're determining eligibility, you just worry about your employer. Have they ever met eligibility at your school? Have they taken a distribution? Do they meet eligibility at your school, right? But when they're leaving upon exit, now it's treated as a multiple plan employer. So now any service they render at all school plan employers, all 265 school plan employers during that 180-day separation period, that counts. So they can't do 8 days at your school and 8 days at another school. 8 days of subsurface at your school and eight days of subsurface at another school. That's a violation. They also can't do just 1 day of ticket taking if it's not substitute service. Doesn't matter if it's under the 8 days. Okay, if you have questions on that, pop them in the Q&A. We have a great team in the background there, John and Nick and Eva and Aaron, Sammy and Stephanie. They can be answering those questions. I know that sometimes these scenarios bring up more questions. I think, again, I really am gonna push those face-to-face webinars, those face-to-face workshops, because it does help that. But I've got to keep going. So if you have questions on that, pop them in the Q&A, not the chat, the Q&A, so they can answer those directly for you, okay? And if it's something that we can't answer or we have more questions to answer, then we can follow up with you. So that defines substitute service. I go over that termination scenario because I think that really hits it home. I think that helps us be able to understand why substitute service matters, how we need to define it, and then further, you know that you need to have that documentation to support it, right? Moving on to the next topic here then, we have eligibility after meeting the hours threshold. So this was actually a question that came in to NPERS. However, I'm going to ask this in a poll question. So community coach records hours using the log and has 3 qualifying months, March, April, and May. If they come back the next year, do you enroll them in the next year? So for those of you that are new or don't know what qualifying months are, let me elaborate a little on that before you answer. John went over that tracking of hours, and if you're looking at the chat, you're able to see that a lot of people are talking about tracking hours. That's what that means. So if you A, don't know how many hours somebody is going to work, or B, know that they are less than 20 hours a week, then you track their hours. Eligibility is contingent upon hours worked. We have to know what real service hours are. What did the people work? So how do we do that? We track all of the hours worked in a calendar month. We divide that by the number of calendar days in that month. We multiply it by 7 days in a week, and that gives you the average. So when we say has 3 qualifying months, what we mean is that you have tracked their hours, you've done the formula, you know that they have 1, 2, 3 qualifying months in the fiscal year. All right, if we can start getting answers going on. While people are answering, Linda says, I've had teachers say themselves would say no regardless because they don't want to jeopardize payments. That's great. And you know, yesterday at the Lincoln workshop, we had somebody ask us, hey, can we just say, this seems like a lot. If somebody's taking a distribution, remember, it's not just retirement, right? It's not just those that are at retirement age and you think are going to be taking their benefit. So we had schools ask, if they are going to be taking a distribution, can we just say they can't work for 180 days? You bet. Statute even allows that. If the school wants to make things more rigid, more strict, you absolutely can. You can say, we don't want you back. Now, it'll get a little confusing on when that 180 days is, right? After 198, it changed. It's the later of NPERS receipt of a valid distribution application or the termination date. But for, let's say, a teacher who knows they're going to retire, they send in their retirement application in April, their termination date is in May, 180 days falls right in line with that termination date. You can do that. The goal at the end of this is to get you to understand the foundational components of it and help us assist the members. You're forward facing, you talk to them, you know who's leaving, right? We provide, NPERS provides education to both the employer and the employee, but you're on that front line. If you can help us, hey, if you're taking a distribution, you really need to be cognizant of your 180 days. You got to know when they are, and you can only perform X service, right? What is X service? 8 days of substitute and or voluntary in a calendar month during the 180-day period, all school plan employers. I'll quit talking because I think that may be hindering people from answering. We've got 60 left to answer. Go ahead. If you just commit, safe place, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're right, if you're wrong. This is just a discussion we're having here. This is just how can we make this easier for you? What tools can we give you? And I think it's very helpful to see you're not the only one that answers that way. And it helps you go, oh, this is hard. I'm not the only one that thinks this is hard. It's not a stumbling block just for me. See if we can get a couple more. We're down to 53 have not answered. All right, John, do you want to just close it up? Thank you, thank you. So we can see 46% said yes, 46%, 46 said yes, 20 said no. All right, so since 20 is the less amount, let's go to the chat and see any of you 20 that said no. Why did you say no? Denise says, my thinking was we would have to enroll right away and submit back contributions, not wait to enroll next year. Okay. Thanks for saying that, Denise. Thank you for the participation. Anybody else with Denise that wants to add why you said no? All right, how about those of you that said yes? We've got how many? 46 that said yes. No guarantee he would be working the 20 hours again next year. What was maybe the reason for the no? Once you meet the 3 qualifying months, the next month of their service, you put them in the plan. Just a guess, I literally have no idea. Angie, I love that. That's great. That's great. I guarantee you, you're not the only one. And there were 50 that didn't answer. So you're in the majority for sure. Morgan, I follow the Excel calculator tool for monitoring hours. They would qualify if their qualifying hours were from July 2024, June 2025. If she only qualified April, May, and July, she wouldn't qualify. Morgan, I feel like you're giving away some of my answers. That was great. That was great. Okay, so Morgan says July 2024 to June 2025. Why does Morgan say that? Because that's the fiscal year for retirement. When we are talking 2 different languages, we know that schools have all of your different languages. You have a different fiscal year, right? When we are talking retirement, this is the year we have to use, okay? Once in, always in. Oh boy, that statement, that's a loaded statement, right? You enroll after the 3 qualifying months. Okay. So community coach records hours using the log. So we're going to assume on this one, 18, US citizen or lawfully present, regular employee. We've established those 3 qualifying months. That means you track it for 3 months and then they go in. The answer for this would be yes. These months, number 1, don't have to be consecutive. However, it doesn't matter when that next payroll period is, right? If they're a regular employee, they have qualified months. we put them in the next payroll period. Doesn't matter if that next payroll period is the next season for coaching. Okay. All right. For those of you that are paying attention, you will know the answer to this one. So poll question. This was a question to NPERS, so I'm throwing it back at all of you. What if they had March, April, and July as qualifying months? John, if you are on there, could you pop up this poll question? This would be same caveats, right? So it is.
That was actually part of the last poll. It was a two-parter.
Oh, it was a two-parter. Oh, well, darn it. Okay. All right. All right. So let's talk this one through. And so maybe Morgan, there we go. They would not qualify. So we're talking about that July to June, right? And so they have to have 3 months during that fiscal year. So for this, they only met March and April, that first fiscal year. It starts over. July for the next year, they have 1. Now, if they do the same service and they work the same amount of hours, at the end of the year, they had July, and then they'll have March and April, right? Don't have to be consecutive. So it would be after April then that you would put them in that July payroll period. Clear as mud? So rephrased, you have retirement fiscal year. Those 3 qualifying months have to be within that retirement fiscal year. Doesn't matter when they are, doesn't matter if they're consecutive. And then once they hit the 3rd one, they go in on the next one. First, we have to classify them. So let's talk about buckets. Here's where we go. These are our statutorily defined terms. The statute says temporary employee, substitute employee, regular employee. The easiest way I can figure out how to help with this is classify each employee into one bucket. You cannot physically be in 2 buckets at one time, okay? So you are in one bucket. That is the employee status that you are. That is your classification. To be in the temporary bucket, all service that you render has to be 1 year or less. You complete a project or a task. When that project or task is complete, your employment ends. You're done. Very narrowly defined. Substitutes are all temporary employees. Not all temporary employees are substitutes, but all substitutes are temporary employees. So we've already went over the first part of what a substitute is, right? You're a temporary employee. You're filling in for a regular employee that's temporarily absent. What does that mean? That means you're not filling in for a vacant position, right? That's that ticket taking scenario. Is there somebody assigned or is there not? If nobody is assigned, if that is nobody's job that they are filling in for, if that is just a position, it's not substitute service. Substitute service, though, also in statute says a substitute is not a regular employee that's hired to fill in for a regular employee that's temporarily absent. What does that mean? A lot of times we hear the word permanent substitute come from employers. So that would be somebody, you know that your school needs substitutes. You know that every day of the week, somebody is gone, somebody's on vacation, somebody is having a baby, somebody is going to training, something is happening that you need substitutes, okay? So you make an agreement with Sally to come in every day of the week or 3 days a week on a regular and ongoing basis. Sally, we need you. We know that we always have subs, so we need you here. And guess what? If there is nobody to sub for, if everybody in the whole entire school decides to show up that day, we still will have you help us. We just need you here. There's filing to do. You can help in John's classroom because John's classroom, he's got a bunch of kids right now that could use the extra help. You could help Kim. She's brand new. She's got a lot of kids in her classroom this year, whatever it is, right? That is what we typically hear as permanent sub. We don't have a definition for permanent sub, but that's kind of what we align it with, is when statute says substitute is not a regular employee that's hired to fill in for regular employees that are temporarily absent. So now we look at the regular bucket. If they don't fall under temporary, they don't fall under substitute, we put them into regular, okay? Because substitute and temporary are so narrowly defined, if they don't fall under there, we put it into regular. So for coaches, we look at, why does NPERS say that coaching is generally considered regular? Well, statute says that service means employment as a school employee and shall not be deemed interrupted by temporary or seasonal suspension of service that does not terminate employment. What does that mean? Let's look at teachers. Yes, teachers have a continuing contract clause, right? So even though your contract says you end at the end of the year, we know that unless other things happen, that contract continues. However, it also says seasonal suspension doesn't terminate your service. So if you have a coach and they're coming back every year, they're regular. Here's the deal. If you have a coach that you just hire because Sally just retired, and this coach comes to you and says, look, I am in it for 1 year. I will do this one season. This is not what I want to do. I have a full-time job. I'm a nurse at the hospital, but I know volleyball. We're a small community. I got you. I will coach for this season. Your documentation says temporary work agreement here for 1 season, which I know, I understand. Most coaching work agreements don't say a start and end date, or they don't say that they extend 1 year. I got you there, but just listen to my scenario. So she comes in and says, I will work this 1 season. The end of that season, she says, these kids are out of control. I don't know what's going on today. I don't know what's going on in today's kids, but they don't listen. They are not respectful. I am not coming back. I am done. You terminate her out of the system. There is no way she is coming back. She doesn't perform anything else for you. She's done. You hire somebody else to be the coach next season, but they, for whatever reason, say they get in a car accident. They can't fulfill it. They're done. They can't coach. So you go back where she sees the job posting, you post the job. Please, will you come? You're all we got. Nobody else has applied for the job. There's a process, there's a rehiring process. She comes in, she says, I'm only doing it this season. End of the season, she says, nope, like I am done this time. Those are the same kids now, they're just seniors. This is not working. I'm not going to do this. So that coach was temporary the first year, said they're going to leave. They were done. There was a clear termination, right? Statute says it does not terminate employment. There was a clear rehire. Typically, that's not what you see though, right? Typically you see Sally knows volleyball. You don't have a lot of coaches to hire from. So you hire Sally as your volleyball coach. She's your volleyball coach. The first year, maybe it would be reasonable that that's temporary. Maybe we know that she's just there 1 year. Maybe she's just trying it out. That could be reasonable. She comes back year 2, 3, 4, 5. She's now done it over a year, right? So the bucket says 1 year or less. She didn't terminate. There's no termination reapplication. And then even if there is, you get 5, 6 years into it, you terminate and rehire every year, because I had that question come up, right? Well, are you just trying to negate the system? I mean, the system is put in place so that you have a retirement, right? You have one of the best retirements out there. Hands down. I would love to be in your retirement system, right? You have a defined benefit plan. That means when you take your lifetime benefit, It is contingent upon your vesting credit. What does that mean? That means it's contingent upon your service hours that equated to vesting credit. You get up to 1,000 service hours a year. You get 1 year of service credit. Your benefit is defined and calculated based on how many years of service, your service credit. And then your highest average salary, and that depends on what tier you're in, how many years they're looking at, right? So it has nothing to do with how much you actually put into the plan. There's a formula for it. We've seen cases that people get paid out 3 times the amount they actually put in. You have a great plan. So if all we're doing is trying to like negate the system just to not get them in the plan because your contribution rates are a little higher, that's not the goal here. The goal of this plan was to help people ultimately in the end so the state wouldn't have to pay for it otherwise, right? Get them in the retirement plan. So what does your documentation say? This is another thing that came out in the new member review. This is that qualifying months, right? So here's kind of more what it looks like. There is, and somebody mentioned it, which is great, and thank you for mentioning that. On our website, there is, I think it's called the eligibility calculator tool. Really all it is, it's a simple tool. It's a simple Excel sheet that just says you put in the total hours that they worked every month. It does that formula that we talked about, right? That it will now be codified in statute, so that average of 20 hours. And then if they meet it, if it's 20 hours or more, it populates like a green, hey, this is a qualifying month, this is a qualifying month. If they get 3, then it populates another cell in that Excel file that says, hey, next payroll period, put them in. So super simple tool, but really easy. That tool was created, guess what? From reporting agents that needed help and said it sure would be nice to have a tool that will tell me when. Now, we can't track the hours for you. We can't force the employees to track their hours and turn them in. We'll talk about that. But once you have the total hours of service rendered, we have to know the hours that they actually rendered service. Eligibility is dependent upon it, okay? Those are the hours that you put in that tool. But what came out in the new member review is when do you put them in? And a lot of times that this 3rd month, so they meet the 1st month, they meet the 2nd month. Again, they don't have to be consecutive, right? We're talking July to June. They meet the 3rd month. You do not put them in on this 3rd month. This is just yet again another qualifying month. The next payroll period, and these are payroll periods. So again, a little confusing because the hours have to be dependent on month, but then it's equated to payroll period. So the next full payroll period is when you start contributions. Your fiscal year, they said it in the chat for you. Oh boy, I did not mean to do that. The fiscal year is July to June. It's those 3. If you have 2, just like the scenario, if you have 2 in 1 year, you start over the next year. It's got to be 3. If you have questions on that, go ahead and put it in the Q&A, and they will start to answer it for you. There is a Q&A from Cassie asking to make sure I understand correctly. A permanent sub does fall under the substitute category. Boy, I'm glad I looked at that. Okay, well, give me just a second here before we get to this next poll question. Let me answer a couple of these. So, and I apologize, I was set up in the room with my team so we could have a little bit of conversation and they could stop me as I was talking, but then my mic wasn't working and my headset wasn't working. So we've got a little bit of technical difficulties that way, but I'll make sure I try to look over here. So to understand correctly, a permanent sub does fall under the substitute category. No. A substitute is not a regular employee that is hired in a regular position to fill in for regular employees that are temporarily absent. They have to be a temporary employee. So if you hire someone on that work agreement that says, hey, I need you to come in, that scenario that I brought up, 5 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever that is, and you're coming in, whether or not there's somebody to sub for, that could be a temporary or a regular. It could not be a substitute. What would be the difference between temporary and regular? Is it 1 year or less? What does your documentation say? What does your documentation say to support that it is temporary? If you're hiring them on a regular and ongoing basis for 20 or more hours a week, how can you support that it's temporary and not regular? What does your documentation say? Aaron also said, asking, so was not a community coach considered a temporary employee? What does your documentation say? The first year, possibly could be considered a temporary employee, right? So as a reporting agent, I understand you typically are not the ones hiring these folks. You're not the decision makers. You're not doing the hiring, right? So how can you support eligibility? How can you establish whether or not this person falls in the temporary bucket or the regular bucket? Ask. Send an email. You are responsible for ensuring that retirement's correct, right? So what do we have to know? To determine if they're a temporary employee, we have to know, are they there 1 year or less or more? If we don't know that it's more than 1 year, it's reasonable that for the first year, they could be a temporary employee, could be a temporary employee, depending upon what your documentation says. But boy, the second they come back that next season, they cannot be a temporary employee anymore unless there was a clear termination and rehire, right? What are the circumstances? What does your documentation say? So if it were me and we hired a coach, and it gets hard because every school does it differently, right? Every school has their dynamics. What documentation you have to support a coach. Sometimes there's no documentation. Sometimes we hear, well, I don't know, they just told me this person is coming in on Monday. Send an email. Ask the questions to establish your eligibility. How long are they going to be here? What's their length of employment? And then how many hours are they going to work a week? Right? That first question, over 1 year, they're regular. They have to be. Statute says 1 year or less, for that first year, they could be temporary. You bet. That's reasonable. What's your documentation say? If they're in that regular bucket and they say that it's 20 or more hours, boy, they're in. It's mandatory. Less than 20, or I don't know what their hours are going to be. Track them. Track the hours. Put them in once they have 3 qualifying months. There is a few more in the Q&A if you have time to cover. Okay, Erin, could you, it would be helpful because there is so much going on over here. It could be helpful if you just unmuted or you had Eva unmute and read to me the questions that you think would be helpful to go over.
So yes, there was a question that came in from Kim that said, so you have a community coach who do not report their hours, so there's no way to track to make sure or not they meet the hours requirement. Do we need to go ahead and put them in the second year of coaching, even though we don't have documentation that their hours make them eligible?
Perfect. Erin, can you just put on there that we're going to answer that on the webinar so that way we show that it has been answered? No. You have to base eligibility on hours worked. And we'll go over this later on too, on where does the onus lie and what's required, right? For non-contributing employees, their eligibility is dependent upon hours worked. We have to know their hours. We cannot just put them in, and we cannot allow no hours. So that being said, I've heard a lot of things, the 4 in-person workshops that maybe we won't discuss on here because it is recorded, and I understand some people don't want to put their names to things like this is what my super is doing or saying, or this is what legal says or whatever. ultimately, end of the day, how can we help you? How can we support you? When you go through an audit with us, again, we ask that the super is in that kickoff meeting. Again, we ask that the super is in the final report meeting so that they hear the same things you hear. But if you need help on, I'm really struggling with X, I know the onus is on me. I know that we have to get hours for non-contributing employees, and how do we do that? Let us know, and let's think about a tool that can help. So John is not able to link the mandatory reporting for extra duty, so he emailed it. Okay, you all should have an email for this document. Okay, so this is mandatory reporting of extra duty. This document was created, oh geez, maybe the first year I was here, to help reporting agents. We had reporting agents saying, I'm really struggling with telling my school where the authority comes from on tracking hours, and then ultimately B, why does it matter? So the front of that goes over where the authority comes from, right? So to establish eligibility, it's dependent on service hours. Your lifetime benefit is dependent upon service credit, which comes from reported actual service hours. So we have to get service hours. We have to know what those hours are. Over and beyond that, the statute says, hey, administrator, hey, NPERS, you get to promulgate rules and regs and guidance on how to comply, right? And we have to be cognizant that we are giving the same information to everybody. And I've heard you that you say that's not always true, but we are trying to make sure that's always true. Number one, though, sometimes not everybody provides the same exact scenario when talking to NPERS, right? Some of the details will be a little different. And depending on the details is depending upon that answer. Number two, though, we're like you, right? We have turnover. We have new people. We have people here that understand we are on the same team and we are all trying to learn really hard information in this really hard school plan. So sometimes we're going to miss things. That's why I say to you, though, get it in writing. Get it in writing, right? You have a phone call with me, unless I am swamped, you will get an email from me that just covers our phone call. And that's not for any other purpose other than to document it for you and me both. And that way you have documentation to support what you did in our conversation. I have documentation to support what I did in our conversation. I put it in to your file so that when I'm no longer here, NPERS has documentation of what was said, right? So the front of that tells the hows and whys. The back of this gives you scenarios on how it makes a difference. So the first one is going to go over, and we'll go into these later, but that first scenario is going to talk about reporting the extra duty for a 1,000-hour employee and why it matters. And the second one's going to talk about eligibility and how it's dependent upon. Okay, I think that I answered that. Aaron, is there another one?
So there's still some confusion around permanent substitute, and the question is why they are not a substitute in the Q&A. So if you would provide some additional information on that, that would be great.
Okay, so one more time, try to saying it in other words. A substitute employee is a temporary employee that is hired to fill in for a regular employee that is temporarily absent. As soon as you hire what we hear as permanent sub, as soon as you hire somebody on a regular and ongoing basis, they are no longer temporary. They're not temporary. A substitute is someone that calls in, goes into the system, and they will do their substitute days. They get the choice. I decide whether or not I come in today. I decide whether I'm going to answer that phone call. I decide whether I go into the software. The school does not depend on them to do it, right? I mean, you may informally know that Sally always does, but she doesn't have to. There's no work agreement saying she has to do it. She's substituting because she wants to. And the only reason why you are starting to count on Sally is because she always wants to, but there's no work agreement doing it. The difference is when there's a work agreement that says the expectation from the school, now the employer is saying, you will be here. We need you here Monday through Friday. You will perform substitute service, but you may not always. You may provide other service, but you as a role, you as an employee, you are expected to be there, regardless of answering the phone, going into the substitute software. You're expected to be there. Hopefully that answers it. If not, whoever is asking that, feel free to send me an email. You can use that audit email, and maybe you and I can have a phone conversation. I hope I've explained it enough. Erin, was there anything else that we needed to hit on?
Vanessa, this is Eva real quick. I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention, and you may have already hit on this, but there was a question from Janelle with regarding any guidance on how to get those hours from our community coaches. I send reminders every month, and sometimes I get them and sometimes I don't. I know that if you haven't covered it, you're going to cover it with regards to documentation. So just wanted to note that there was that comment or question in there.
Yeah, you bet. So we will cover that, but I will just touch on it really quick. We can't tell you how to get it right. What we have heard from some schools is that, especially for those community coaches, they've said, we're not going to pay you until your hours are turned in. It just is what it is. And that has worked for them. I don't know, other than just getting that backing. How do you get that backing to help support to your community coaches that these hours are imperative? We have to have your hours to know. So that could maybe be an exploratory conversation later. I know that people struggle with that. I think I hear a little more that people struggle with the teachers that don't turn in their extra duty hours, and we'll get into that too. So hopefully that answers that a little bit. Are there any other questions before I move on? Okay.
Nope.
Nope. I think we're good, Vanessa. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so question to NPERS was, when is a community coach who only works 3 months not a temporary employee when there's no guarantee they will return the next year? They also have the 180-day break in service. So I think we've went over this. It's what documentation do you have, right? Another question to NPERS, if an employee is hired to work at least 20 hours per week, meeting all other eligibility qualifications, again, we're talking 18, US citizen or lawfully present, and a regular employee, do you enroll them, but they end up not working 20 hours a week? What do we do? So you're not expected to have a crystal ball. If you all can open this up or look at this later, I just realized what time it is, and I want to be really cognizant of our time as well. I will stay on as late as everybody else, but I want to make sure we move through the slides that we have. This NPERS school plan eligibility checklist is huge. So it will walk you through, is the person 18? Are they a US citizen or lawfully present? Are they hired as a substitute? Looks like no. So it says proceed to question 4. Are they hired as a temporary employee? Nope, regular and ongoing, because we already said they meet all those other eligibility qualifications, right? So not a temporary employee, no. It says this person is considered a regular employee and working on an ongoing basis. Proceed to question 5. Has this person taken a distribution? Well, that's one we haven't really got into. We'll have to figure that out, but we're going to assume no. So we go to 7. Was this person previously employed at your district? We're going to say no, proceed to 8. And then it says, will they be working more than 20 hours? If the answer is yes, you put them in. Right? You put them in. Use this, fill this out, save it as a paper file if that's what you do, save it as an electronic file if that's what you do. We've had people over the last couple of weeks say that they fill this out in hand, scan it in, or save it. They fill it out with the employee and they do it every time, and that's their documentation. If you put somebody in with the intention of 20 hours and they don't end up working it, you put them in correctly. The caveat that I would say to this is if somebody, because we've got this, actually a few times is somebody quits in that same month that they were hired, and you know before you even submit payroll that they are not going to be even an employee, let alone not working 20 hours, right? Go ahead and unclick that retirement button. No need for just one. You knew ahead of time, that's perfectly reasonable. How specific does the extra duty log need to be? Listen, we're just excited you're using a log, okay? We've got Post-it notes before, we've got calendar sheets with things written in. Obviously, we are auditors. The more specific it can be, the better. But truly have hours on a sheet of paper with the dates and the name. If it has what they were doing, even better. All right, establishing eligibility upon rehire. This is our next one. We can see that the 1s and 2s are really going down, right? The 3s gone way up, the 2s have gone way up, the purples are starting to go. So this seems to be a harder topic. I am going to push this checklist. It is updated with the law changes. We will get it updated with the law changes as they progress. Getting it off of our website is the easiest, fastest, quickest, most current, most accurate, right? Here's where it is. This is exactly where I was saying. If you go to our page, you go all the way to the right, employer reports, it's got that drop down, Nebraska schools. Click on that all the way to the bottom. This is what you see. This box, it is the very first thing there. And by the way, this has links to several other documents on here. But here's a lot of these documents, a lot of the tools that we've made available. It walks you through. If you don't have it, if you don't have it right now, you don't have it pulled up, this is what it looks like. Before this, though, it actually goes into, it gives you a spot to put their name and your name. It goes into those bucket classifications. Regular, substitute, temporary. It tells you regular is eligible, substitute and temporary are not. It talks about a definition. What's a bona fide termination? Talks about distribution, right? We've talked about that. It's not just people that are retiring. We can't walk away from here thinking, I only need to be concerned of the 180 days for people that are retiring. It's taking a distribution. So then it takes you through, and it's color coded. I tried to take the colors out. Mackenzie, I saw she's on here. She's like, no, can you leave those colors in? We vet these, right? We have employers that will work with us because they know that we are trying to do tools that help, right? So how can we help you? It color coded, yes, yes, blue, red, no. Here's the questions it walks you through. Tells you which question to go to next. Gives you important information. If you say yes, it also gives you very, very important information, gives you cautions, walks you through. At the end, it's got a space for them to sign and you to sign. Again, this is not mandatory. It's a tool that you can use, but I haven't heard one person that didn't like it when they used it. Before on our website, we had like a flow chart. You could click and it would go to the next one. And the feedback was, man, we need something that we can print off. We need something that we can see the questions that were asked and how it was answered and how we got to the answer that we went to. So this is what you have. So a question to NPERS is, how do we find out if a retired teacher has applied for or taken a distribution to help with substitute work allowed? Ask them. Ask them. Have you taken a distribution? If they don't know, or you think that maybe they're answering incorrectly, ask us. Okay? Employer reporting, Stephanie and Sammy, they're your first go-to. They can help you. They're not going to tell you the balance. They're not going to tell you how they took a distribution. And truly, member services will tell you that as well. So if you call and you get a hold of member services, they can tell you yes or no. Did they take a distribution? Why does that matter? It matters because if you have, number one, a regular employee that was contributing at your school and they left and they did not take a distribution and they come back as a regular employee, it doesn't matter how many hours they work. You put them back in. Said a different way. Sally is working at your school and contributing as a para. She decides to leave 5 years ago. She terminates. She's done. She goes and she's now a nurse. Took a different career path. She comes back years later, and now you've hired her. She just wants to do food service work because it's less hours. She comes back as a regular employee. She's now only working 3 hours a day. So she's working 15 hours a week. You put her back in because she A, contributed at your school in the past, B, did not take a distribution, C, came back as a regular employee. It also matters because the service that you render when you've terminated and taken a distribution versus just terminated all regular service is different. So if you're terminating and taking a distribution, right, that's that 180-day separation period. That's when that applies. And we've talked about what's allowed in there. 8 days of substitute or voluntary service during a calendar month, during the 180 days separation period, all school plan employers. Now, if you're not taking a distribution, you can terminate all regular service on Friday. You can come back on Monday and substitute unlimited. So question to NPERS, if you hire a retired teacher for a long-term sub, 45 days, do I need to enroll them in NPERS? If they are a sub, so number one, we need to know the definition of substitute. If they are a substitute and they are in that bucket, they are a substitute employee, which means they are doing no other service that would count as regular. They are a substitute employee. You hire them for 45 days, they are not eligible. If they are a sub, they are not eligible. Retired to me, again, right, says you have a teacher that terminated all regular service and they took a distribution. So now, if they come back for 45 days to sub, can they do it within their 180 days? No. Why? 8 days of sub-service a month, right? But if we're outside of those 180 days, so if they retired, we're going to assume in this situation that they've had a bona fide termination, that they've had a 180-day separation period. So they can come back after having established a bona fide termination, a 180-day separation period for 45 days to sub, and you would not contribute on them. All right, John, if you're still with us, I feel like I've been talking for a while. We've got the next poll question here. This was a question that came into NPERS. Oh boy, I already answered it. Well, this is an easy one. Let's see if anybody is still awake and still participating. If you hire a retired teacher for a long-term sub, 45 days, do I need to enroll them in NPERS? Let's see if people were listening. While people are answering, Eva, Aaron, are we good on the chat and the questions?
Yes, we are good.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, I'll just give it a couple more seconds here. Most people were listening. All right, John, you can close it up at any time. Share those results. We can see a couple people were not listening. If we're talking about they are terminated, they have had a bona fide termination, they have completed their 180-day separation period, they are done, they come back and sub outside of that for 45 days, do you enroll them? No, they are a substitute. We go back to those buckets, right? When we're thinking of that question, what are they? Are they temporary? Are they substitute? Are they regular? What bucket do they fall into? What classification of employee are they? If they are not temporary, if they are not substitute, they are regular. For this one, if they are filling in for a regular employee that's temporarily absent, substitute. If it's a vacant position, temporary, because it's 45 days, right? 1 year or less. Okay, moving on to eligible service credits. You can see the ones and twos have gone way down, right? Orange went way up. Fours and fives are up a little bit. So there were not a lot of questions about service credit in the survey. We don't typically see a ton of findings on service credit outside of, establishing eligibility or tracking hours. I look at this as a little different. So if you have questions, please, 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 we can't help you unless we know what your questions are. Put them in the Q&A and they can help answer those questions for you. But I'll just go over statute a little bit. So what is creditable service? It's working days. So when they are performing service, that is service credit. That's service hours that then gets calculated into service credit. Any days that they are paid for sick or vacation, they're used. If they use a sick day, if they use a vacation day, they're paid. Those are service credit. Holidays. Any other leave days for which the employee is paid regular wages as part of the employee's agreement with the employer. What is that? A lot of times we see admin pay for that. If you have an agreement outside of when you work, sick days, vacation days, holidays, on call could be that. You're not actually necessarily rendering service, but you're on call. Sometimes admin leave falls under on call. Are they expected to render service? And if so, then it would be creditable service. It does not include when a member is compensated for less than minimum wage or unused leave days. So if you are a school that pays out at the end of a school year or when somebody leaves, then you do not report that as eligible wages. You do not contribute on that, right? That's not pensionable. So used vacation, used sick, that is service credit. Unused is not. The one thing that the state auditors have hit on a few times recently has been receiving 2 service hours for 1 hour of service. So let's say that you are already getting service credit during your regular 8-hour day for your plan period, and now you go and sub during that plan period. You still have only rendered 1 hour of service, so you get 1 service hour, not 2. Any other questions on that? Let us know, but there weren't any questions that came through the survey, so I'm just not sure what to answer for you. Let's see. It looks like Morgan says, I have a question since I'm new. How do service hours work in the summer? Like technically teachers work August to May, but still get the salary through August 31st of every year. I never know if I'm supposed to do 0 hours for them or you take 8 hours times normal working days in a month and do that. I mean, they aren't truly working, but never knew the right answer. That's great, Morgan. Thank you for asking that because you are not the only person, I'm sure, that has this question. So during the summer months, if they are not rendering service, it's 0 hours. That is the one time you will hear us say all the time that wages and hours should be reported when worked and earned. And that's the one time that we know teachers are seasonal employees, right? For the most part. I have a daughter that is a teacher, and I know she works in the summer, but for the most part, right, they're seasonal employees. They're not working in the summer, so you would report 0 hours. The wages paid during summer are for services already rendered. When the plan was put into place, it used to be that the wages were reported when they were earned, and over the course of time, there was an agreement that we would accept the wages reported during the summer months for those teachers. So you're doing it right. 0 hours in the summer. Don't report any hours for that. Can you go over the community coaches again that only work during wrestling season? For example, they only get paid 3 months maybe, and then they come the next year and work again. So Brenda, can you just elaborate if you're needing to go over eligibility for that, or if you are already contributing on them? I'm just not sure what you need me to go over. Okay, so I will let you guys go over the Q&A. Let's get back to here. I do want to be cognizant of everybody's time. Having a discussion like this, I think it's great, but you just never know how long it's going to go. And so I do. For those of you that have a strict time schedule, I want you to be able to get off when we said that this would end. So tracking hours is the next one. We know that this is a big deal. This may go over your community coach question, but you can see those 1s and 2s are going down, 3, 4s, 5s are going up. So let's go over this. We're going to hit this with a poll question here. This was a question that came into NPERS on the survey. If you have a coach whose only jobs are coaching one sport every year and substitute teaching, what hours do you use to evaluate putting them in the plan or not? Question is to you all. If you can start to answer that. In the meantime, Erin, Eva, John, Nick, Sammy, Stephanie, is there anything I should answer while people are answering the poll? Okay, we're going to go with no. Brenda, yes, eligibility, we do enter them into retirement. I can email you too. So community coaches that only work during the wrestling season, for example, and they only get paid 3 months, maybe. So Brenda, yeah, if you have documentation to support, so A, we know that they're a regular employee, and B, then what's the minimum hours that they're going to work? So if we know that it's 20 or more, then you would put them in. That's accurate. If we don't know that, then we would track it, right? And if they meet the 3 months, then you would put them in, even if it's that next season. All right, we have 61 that haven't answered here. And we've got, let's see, I'll just tell you guys so far, we've got coaching hours only, we have 27 that said that. Substitute hours only, we have 0 that said that. Both hours combined, 22. And the answer D is they aren't eligible, so you don't track, is 0. Hey, that part's great. That was great, great. On the zeros, those are great, because those are not the correct answers. Okay, John, if you want to go ahead and close it up, we'll just start talking about it. Okay, so for those of you that said, let's see, what's less? Boy, it's barely. This is pretty 50-50. Both hours combined is 23, coaching hours only is 28. So 23 is less than 28. Let's do both hours combined. In the chat, why do you say both? What's our reason for saying both? If you have a coach who we now consider regular because they're teaching, they're coaching every year, and they're substitute teaching, why do we say both? Kim says coaching is regular service. Greg says regular and ongoing. Okay, so if regularly sub and regularly fill another position, then they are considered regular employee and must count all. Regular employees are all hours worked. All right, thank you all. So for those of you that said no, why did you say, or I'm sorry, for those of you that said coaching hours only, why did you say coaching hours only? Let's see, Denise, I think on the both hours said if they are a regular coach, it seems like a teacher and you would need to consider all hours. Since a coach is a regular employee, then all hours worked for the district are reported. So let's see, this is not reporting. This question is for eligibility, but you are right. If it's reported, you report it all. Substitute teaching is not eligible, which is why you said coaching hours only. All right, thanks for the participation. Okay, so the question to NPERS on this question, right, because this was the question that came to us on the survey, was would they be considered a regular employee? So my question to all of you is what makes someone a regular employee and when do you track hours? We go back to statute and what regular employee is. I won't spend a lot of time on statute. I think we have 20 minutes left. I have found out the last 2 weeks, I'm probably one of the only people that likes looking at statute. So let's go back to our buckets. Let's make it simple, right? Can this person fit in the temporary employee bucket? They're coaching every single year. No. Can they fit in substitute? No, they're coaching. No, so they're regular. So we know they're regular, okay? Regular bucket, that's what they're in. They also do substitute service, right? But they're in the regular bucket. They are a regular employee. Once you are in the regular bucket, once you are a regular employee, to establish eligibility, all of your service hours have to be tracked and added together. Statute again, right, says employee, temporary employee, substitute employee, regular employee. Once you are established as a regular employee, you track all of your hours. So if you work coaching and substitute and temporary, they all go together. For this one, the coaching hours and the substitute hours get added together to establish eligibility. Once you've established eligibility, then you're right. You had said that before too, right? Then you report all of it. Track it all for eligibility, track and report it all for those that met. So another question to NPERS, additional pay and hours reported. A coach sponsor receives additional pay per trip if they are required to drive their own students to an activity. Retirement is calculated, but 0 hours are reported because the same hour is reported in their extra duty hours turned in. Same with a para getting extra pay for covering a certified teacher. They are using the time clock for hours worked. What hours do you report? John, did we have a poll for that? It said poll question.
Yes, we do, and there it is.
Perfect. So it looks like it's a 2-part question. Go ahead and answer those. If you were listening, you should have the answer. And I'll put it back up there. So this again, said in other words, you have a regular employee that is already getting that hour reported for their main service. They now do an extra service during 1 hour of their already reported hours. So do you report 2 hours for that or 1? And we won't keep this open very long. Looks like majority are getting this. So just 1 hour. John, you can go ahead and close it up and show the results. This person, whoever sent this in, these were, I don't know who actually sent these in, but this person is doing it correct, right? So if you are already reporting 1 hour for driving or for the activity, you're rendering another service during that 1 hour, you still only get 1 hour reported. Same goes for the para. You already receive that hour reported. You don't get a second hour reported for 1 hour of service rendered. All right, moving on to reportable compensation. Again, not a lot of questions on this one. So let's break it down as simple as we can, because it looked like people were a little leery on this topic, and maybe they had some more questions on this topic. So once you're in that regular bucket, right, then all wages are reportable. That's how it is. So any service that you render, any wages that you earned, that's reportable. So let's just look at statute again, because I didn't have a whole lot to go on what questions surfaced from this. Your eligible compensation is essentially your gross wages. Okay, so your gross wages for service rendered, that's going to include any overtime, that's going to include the retirement contributions that are taken out of the gross wages and sent to retirement for NPERS or for any other retirement plan. That also includes any retroactive pay due to court orders. So we've had some court orders recently. If you have somebody that sues you that says I should have been paid X, then you have a court order that says you're right. That can be eligible compensation. More importantly, though, what doesn't it include is cash in lieu. Cash in lieu of what? Typically, we see insurance. So if you are giving a fringe benefit, giving money because they chose not to get insurance, then that would not be pensionable. Fringe benefits, cash awards would not. Reimbursements for expenses. So the gas, cell phone, those reimbursements, they will not be pensionable. Unused leave payout, right, we talked about that too in the service credit. So ultimately, end of the day, they're leaving or it's the end of the year and you pay out for any leave that they didn't use. That is not pensionable compensation. It has to be used leave. Per diems, bonuses for services actually not rendered. This is where it gets a little tricky. We touched on this last year, definitely. Since COVID, we have seen way more stipends, or retention stipends, hiring incentives, things like that. And we just ask, probably the easiest way to go about these, again, just remember there's 265 schools, right? Everybody does it different. Everybody words things different. Everybody navigates each scenario based on what works for you at your school. So we just ask that you send it in, because sometimes we will see and have a bonus for services rendered. If we can tie it to service, then it's pensionable. If we can't, it's not. Sometimes, and probably more often than not, it's a gray area. We've had some come through just based off of the workshops that we've already done that are gray, and within our own group where, well, maybe it should be, well, maybe it shouldn't be. Listen, best case scenario, you sent it to us, we're able to look at it and we can vet it. Ultimately, end of the day, statute says that the director has the final determination. So if we are not able to come to an agreement on whether this is pensionable or not, it goes to the director. Either way, if it stops with us, if it goes to the director, you will have a final determination, and you have that documentation to support why you did or did not report that to retirement. You put that in your file, we put that in your file over here. So down the road, when none of us are here, everybody knows why that was reported to retirement. Okay, it just depends on what the documentation says, and what's in it.
Hi,
Early
Vanessa.
retirement. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, don't want to
No.
mean to interrupt you, but we had a question in the Q&A that may fall into this category here as you're discussing it. And the question was from Kristen, and she said, since a school follows federal minimum wage rather than state, is this something in the negotiated agreement that is below the minimum wage supposed to not be included in compensation if it is above federal but below state?
Yeah, so this question has come out a few times in the workshop, and I can't say that we have had that question. So that's something, when I said at the end of the workshops, why we'll be sending out an email, that's one of the things that we'll have on there. We just need to vet that internally for the statute. We just need to make sure which one that, so that one will be answered after in the email that I send out to everybody.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, next poll question. This was a question that came into NPERS. If there is no break in employment, but an employee's schedule changes to below 20 hours per week, do you continue in the plan? We're running out of time, so I won't give as much time on this, but please, participation helps. Again, we're not looking for everybody to have the right answers, right? We are looking for people to answer how they think, so that other people can also see that it's hard, see that other people will answer the same way you do. Not one time in all of this has there only been one person that answers it a certain way, right? We have 51 left. All right, John, go ahead and shut it down whenever you have a second. That looks like 51 said yes and 7 said no. Okay, so that is a distinction, right? So for those of you that said no, those 7 of you, go ahead and put in the chat why you said no. For those of you that said no, anybody want to answer why you said no? All right, let's move on to those of you that said yes. Overwhelmingly, 51% said yes. Why did you say yes? If there's no break in employment, but an employee's schedule changes to below 20 hours per week, do you continue in the plan? Once you qualify, you stay in the plan. No break in employment. Once in the plan, always in the plan. Once in the plan, always in the plan. Oh, we're hearing that a lot. Okay, for those of you that say this once and always in, let me change your way of thinking. Okay, because some people get confused on that. Some people hear once you're in the plan, you're always in the plan. It doesn't matter what bucket you're in. Okay, with 198, we have a very clear and distinct, if you terminate all regular employment and you are now a substitute or you now are a temporary employee, you stop contributions, you don't stay in. So let's try to reframe the once and always in to until you terminate all regular employment. Right? So if there's no break in employment, but a person's schedule changes, it can do this. You can do over 20, under 20, right? Once you've established eligibility as a regular employee, until you terminate from regular employment, you stay in the plan. So when do contributions stop? Well, when you terminate all regular employment. Okay? So whether or not you're taking a distribution, if you are no longer a regular employee, you leave on a Friday, you come back on a Monday as a substitute, then contributions stop. Termination rules. And I know I'm speeding up. I'm looking at the time here. So these are the questions that came in. Does the allowable substitute service after termination vary, considering whether they have just quit or actually retired? Yes, right? We've went over that. So 8 days in a month, in a calendar month, if you're taking a distribution, you can do unlimited. If you're not taking a distribution, you can terminate your regular service, come back as a substitute, and work as many as you want. If you are hiring a retired teacher back or hiring a true substitute, when do you take out retirement or don't you? First of all, I don't like the word true. I know that NPERS used to say that all the time. Is it true substitute work? Here's the deal. Statute says substitute, right? There's one substitute. So we have to talk in retirement language. If you're a substitute, you are ineligible. You do not have contributions taken out. If they have not taken a distribution at the time they are rehired as a substitute, but they later apply for or take a distribution, how does the 180-day rule apply? So before 198, so that was March 18th, 2024 or before, their 180 days started at termination. After 198, so March 19th, 2024 or beyond to current, their 180 days starts the later of termination date or NPERS receipt of a valid distribution application. Reminder of how to treat terminated employees who return to sub, retirees, and those who just quit. Remember this retirees word, right? We're not looking at just retirees. We are looking at, have you terminated all regular service and now you're taking a distribution? So if you've terminated and you're taking a distribution, it's the 8-day rule. You need that 180-day separation rule applies. And if you're not taking a distribution, then you don't need to worry about it. Retired does substituting, then decides to come back full-time or part-time. So retired, we're talking a regular employee that terminated all regular in service. They took a distribution. They came back and did substituting. And now they want to come back, let's say a regular position full-time, 20 hours or more, they go in. Part-time, so if it's less than 20 or you don't know, then you establish eligibility, right? You track those hours. So we've defined the termination process, regular employee, terminating all regular employee, difference between if you're taking a distribution or not. We've looked at it's a distribution, right? Not just retiree, refocus, reframe the brain to not think about just your retirees. what service is allowed if you're taking a distribution versus when you're not. The 180-day separation period, that distinction, that March 19th, 2024, highlight that. Remember that date. Currently, if they're terminating, it's later of, right? But if they terminated before, it's termination date. Not taking or requesting a distribution, when do contributions stop, right? Once they move buckets. They change classification to an ineligible classification, a substitute or temporary, then they stop. John, we are supposed to end at noon, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So here's the deal. I have pretty much gotten through almost all of the topics. The other topics are law changes, which Sammy went over, John, Nick went over, so we have those. I will stay on and do these poll questions. If you want to learn, you want to go through the poll, you want to have discussions, you want to talk, you want to do them, stay on. If everybody signs off, we can be done. I'm not sure how in a webinar it went longer than the workshops, but in the workshops, I'm not sure. Maybe I just talk more when I'm just in a room by myself talking to my screen. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to pop up the poll questions. Know that I am cognizant of everybody's time. I appreciate all of you for doing this. I know I've been saying it. I know I only did one. I am going to try to do those quarterly let's fix it, like lunch and learns, and have conversations and have a 30-minute just take these topics that we surveyed and that we talked about and be able to just do them and then have them recorded. Here's the problem. The first one that I did, the laws changed immediately right after, and so it's hard. Right. And so we just need to be cognizant when we're looking at the videos that are posted, that they're current, they're accurate, but that is on the top of my list to do. Providing the training and making sure that you know that we are here to help you. That's paramount. We have an amazing education team that is here that are going to work really hard to do videos that are topic focused, shorter, smaller, getting you that stuff, knowing that when laws change, they need to be updated. We need to be cognizant of when they're made. So with that being said, there was 3 minutes left for the scheduled time. Again, thank you all so much for coming in here. John, Nick, anybody want to say anything before, if anybody starts to leave, before I get into the poll questions?
Just that if you do have any questions, please reach out to us. We are aware that there's a request for FAQs. So shoot us an email, whether it be to accounting or auditing or to our educational service team. And obviously we'll try to answer that, and that'll be great material for the future FAQ. And also always visit our website. We try to put out as much information as possible. And that's NPERS.ne.gov.
Yeah. Plug for the website. Use the eligibility checklist. Use the manual. We just updated it. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Hop off whenever you want. We're going to go through some poll questions here. I think it's great education to see how other people answer them and to just have the discussion. So I'm willing to stay on as long as you're willing to stay on, and we can go through them. So poll question: John was a middle school math teacher that also coached basketball and track. He retired at the end of fiscal year ending 25. His last day worked was 5/25/25, but his contract end date was 5/31/25. NPERS received John's application for retirement on April 2nd, 2025. He returns as a substitute in January 2026 and asks to coach track. Do you have John fill the track position? So we'll give it another 10, 20 seconds. Commit. Man, there are 60 people left, 84 people left in here. Commit and let us know. You're here. Let's learn. Let's figure it out. We only have 27 people so far that have answered. And it's pretty even. Give it another 10, 20 seconds. Who else is going to be courageous and answer a yes or no on this one? Down to 48 more that haven't answered. Numbers are dropping. 44. All right. We'll stop it at 40, John, whenever you see that, unless they just quit responding. Okay, let's stop it, John. We got 42 people left that have not done it, but we do have 30 that said yes, and 11 that said no. For those of you, 11 is smaller than 30. Let's go into the chat. And for those of you that said no, why do you say no? Give us a reason. I didn't count my months. Lisa, I don't know what that means. It could be yes. Oh, okay. All right. Could be viewed as prearranged. Oh, look at you, Greg. I don't even think we really talked about that. All right, that was one of his regular jobs before he retired, Kim. All right, thank you for answering and being courageous enough to just put it out there and have the conversation. Those of you that said yes, 30 of you, majority of you did. A couple of you pop in the chat. Why did you say yes? Because 180 days are passed and the position was not prearranged. Yes, as long as it was not prearranged, it is over 180 days. 180 days were met. All right. So focusing on those 180 days. NPERS generally considers coaching as seasonal, as regular service. Why? Because service is not deemed interrupted by seasonal suspension that does not terminate, right? So just because somebody asks for, applies for, receives retirement does not mean they've terminated anything. The getting a retirement is between us and the member. Employment is between you and the member, right? So what documentation do you have to support that they really did terminate all of their service? That this was not a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey, John, can you come back next season? You go ahead and retire because financially it doesn't make sense to keep working and contributing. You're not going to really get any more. So you retire, you go get your benefit. We'll see you at the next track season. NPERS guidance is to wait a year. Do not come back the next season because of the statute, right? But again, it depends on what does your documentation say. So did he truly terminate it, right? It's not a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He was done. He left. He no longer wants to do anything. You hired Tom to coach track. Tom got in a car accident. He can't do it. You know, it's that scenario that we brought up earlier. So he really did terminate out of the system. He's coming back only because there was no prearrangement there, because it could be prearrangement, right? The other one is prearrangement, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you're going to come back here. But what documentation do you have to support that he really did terminate? All right, next poll question. Patty is contributing at your school as a para, working 30 hours a week. On Friday, March 22nd, 2025, Patty decides to terminate her para position. On Monday, March 2025, Patty applies for an open position at your school to help paint the bathrooms because they were vandalized. Do you start contributions on Patty? If you were listening before, you might know this answer. So poll is open. Go ahead and just take a guess, take a stab at it. Safe place, you'll see. I mean, it pretty much probably all depends on what your documentation says, right? For all of these answers, but let's talk it through. All right, we have 53 left that haven't answered. Yeah, there's still 75 of you here. Thank you. Sorry to keep you long. Oh my goodness. 40 that have not answered. Let's see if we can get, I don't know that we've ever got past that 40 no answer. Oh, we did it. 39 not answered. Let's see, anybody else here? Got a couple more coming in. Yeah, take a stab at it. Do you start contributions on Patty? All right, John, can you close it up? Perfect. So we can see 26 say yes, we start contributions on Patty, and 13 say no. 13 is less than 26. Let's move on over to the chat and let me know. For those of you that said no, why do you say no? Patty was contributing at your school as a para, working 30 hours a week. She terminates on Friday. comes back Monday to an open position to paint the bathrooms because they were vandalized. Painting is a temporary service. Thank you, Tara. Temp position, Stacy says. All right, for those of you that said yes, 26 of you that said yes, why do you say yes? Anybody want to take a shot at it? I would say continue the contributions because she would not have had time to terminate, break in service, take a distribution, retire after painting project because she didn't take a distribution. All right, thanks Jennifer and Denise for being courageous to answer those on there for the chat. All right, let's talk this through. So Patty is a regular employee. She is in the regular bucket, right? Contributing 30 hours a week as a para. She says, I am done, terminated, I don't want to do this anymore. But then over the weekend, the bathrooms get vandalized. So now we need somebody because we don't have anybody to do it to paint the bathrooms. So how long do the bathrooms take? What is that position? We know that she's no longer in the regular bucket for the para position, right? Like she's removed from that bucket. So now which bucket do we put her in? Well, how long is the painting going to take? Is that 1 year or less? If it is, it's temporary. So you can remember, you can terminate on a Friday from your all regular service. On Monday, start a temporary position. As long as it's not an extension of your regular position, it is temporary, right? It's under that very narrowly defined 1 year or less to complete a task. And once that task is complete, the employment ends. So for this, hopefully it doesn't take over 1 year to paint, but it might. If it doesn't, it's temporary service and you would stop contributions. Marcus was contributing at your school 6 years ago when he was a cook. Marcus reapplied and was hired for the custodian position posted. Do you start contributions for Marcus? So a couple of the questions that came out with this poll, just to clarify, we have Marcus was 18, lawfully present or U.S. citizen, regular employee who met eligibility to contribute. And he was, let's just say he did it for 4 years and he terminated 6 years ago. So now 6 years later, he comes back and you're hiring him as a custodian for the position that was posted. Do you start contributions? Go ahead and get in the chat, start answering there. We have 18 people, 20 people have answered so far. All right. They're still coming in pretty fast. Boy, this one's pretty one-sided. 33 people so far have answered out of 66. So half of the people that are still here. Boy, this one, we have only one person that said no so far. Anybody else think no? All right, go ahead and close it up, John. If you are courageous enough, I know that's a lot. So if you said no, do you want to put why you said no? I'll give it just a couple of seconds. I know that's a lot. Need to check on many things. Did he take a distribution? How many hours did he work, etc. So yeah, so maybe it depends, right? Yeah. There's a lot of things we don't know. So if we go back to that eligibility checklist, is he 18? Yes. Citizen lawfully present? Yes. Hired as a substitute? We're going to say no. Custodian's not a substitute. Temporary employee? Let's go with no. He's your custodian, right? Regular, he goes in that bucket. So the answer to the, was this person hired, rehired as a temporary employee? Let's go with no. This person is considered a regular employee and working on an ongoing basis. Number 5, has this person taken a distribution? Let's go with no. Go to question 7. Was this person previously employed at your school district or ESU and participating in the Nebraska Public Schools retirement plan due to hours worked? Yes, it is mandatory. But you hit it, Denise. I mean, it depends, right? In here, we didn't say he took a distribution. So if we go along those facts and he didn't take a distribution, he comes back in a regular position, you put him in, it doesn't matter what the hours worked were. But if he did take a distribution, right, and then we put him in that regular bucket, and then it's like a new hire. We need to figure out, well, how many hours is he going to work? So great job. Next poll question. Donna is a teacher that retired in May 2025. On August 15th, 2025, you are informed the new teacher hired to fill Donna's position had a family emergency and needed to move to California to take care of her mom. Donna has agreed to come back and substitute until you find a replacement. Has Donna had a bona fide separation? Boy, there's still 64 of you here. This is great. All right. So poll question is up. Do you think Donna had a bona fide separation? So she retired. So what that means is she terminated all regular service. She took a distribution. So those are the things we know, okay, in May. So end of the school year. Now, beginning of the next school year, you already had somebody hired to fill in for Donna. Beginning of the next school year, you find out that the person you had hired for Donna now has to move to California to take care of her mom. So Donna says, I'll come in and sub until you find a replacement. Did she have a bona fide separation? Answers are a little slower for this one. This one's a little tricky, and I'll give you a hint. This one also emphasizes why it matters that we use retirement language in the terms and the definitions defined in statute. Really, really emphasizes that. Oh boy, we saw 51 that have not answered. I had somebody say they're not seeing a poll. Jennifer, if you just want to answer in the chat what your answer would be. We only have 14 people here that have answered, 49. My poll went away as well. No. Okay. All right. That's all right. We can post the results. No, she has not. So most of the people that can't see the poll then in the chat are saying no, she has not. So for those, let's just go with that. The answers at the end were 3 said yes, 11 said no, just on the poll. But so let's go, since most in the chat are saying no, why are you saying no? What's the no about? Why do we say that Donna has not had a bona fide separation? Has not been 180 days. She did not have the 180-day break. Okay, so we're talking about the not 100. She has taken a distribution. It hasn't been 180 days. For those of you that are saying 180 days, she can substitute though, right? She can do eight days of substitute service in the 180 days. I presume her termination date was the end of May, so she didn't sit out the 180 days. Okay, so for those of you that said yes, not as many of you, why did you say yes? It would be more than 8 days a month, Brenda said. Okay. It will take more than 8 days a month to hire someone. Jennifer knows how long the hiring process takes. All right. For those of you that said yes, she has had a bona fide separation, why did you say yes? Take a shot at it. It helps for the conversation. I know there's not a lot, but that's all right. A lot of these are it depends. It depends on what your documentation says. All right, I don't see anybody that said yes, taking a shot at it. So let's talk about it. Donna's replacement had a family emergency, needed to move to California to take care of her mom. So is Donna filling in for, let's call her Sally. Is Donna filling in for Sally? Is this substitute service, first off? Or is this a vacant position? Was Sally even put into the system? Did she even get that far? Or did she get that far and it's just an immediate leave of absence? What is it? So what service, this one was a little tricky because it says Donna agreed to come back and substitute until you find a replacement, right? But that's what we hear. That's what we hear all the time, especially in these termination things is that substitute. So we need to make sure that we're defining substitute correctly. So what documentation do you have to support that it is substitute service? If it's not substitute service, she could only do 1 day of it and be in violation, right? She can't do any if it's not substitute or voluntary service, which I don't think that Donna is volunteering. But even if it is volunteering, it's only 8 days. And if she does some subbing and some volunteering, it's 8 days total, right? So what does your documentation say? But more than likely, I mean, you hit it on the head. So it's probably going to be over even if it is substitute service, right? All right. Next poll question. Tom retired in May 2025. In August and September, Tom provided periodic substitute bus driving and activity route driver service. Activity route driving is typically assigned to bus route drivers. Did Tom have a bona fide separation? The poll is up. There's still 58 people with us. So let's see if you're here. Hopefully you didn't just walk away and it's just your background noise. Hopefully you are still interested in learning. So although nobody's answering the poll yet. All right, here we go. They're starting to come in. Tom retired in May. He provided periodic substitutes, bus driving, and then activity route service in August and September. Those activity route driving activity routes are typically assigned to bus drivers. Did he have a bona fide separation? We've got 57 people still with us. Of that, 40 have not answered. Take a shot at it. We're getting a mix. So either way you answer, you've got other people that are answering the same way you are. And I can say with the conversations that we have had in these, that is probably because every school does it different. Every school does activity driving different. There we go. More and more are coming in. We've got so far 19 that said yes and 7 that said no. John, you can close at any time here. For those 7 that said no, since that's less, go ahead and pop in the chat why you said no. And I think these last 2 must stay at the 8 days though, as long as it was 8 days or less per month. I think that was for the bus driving one. But for those that said no, why did you say no? That he did not have a bona fide separation? We don't have regular or assigned to activity drivers. Ah, exactly. There you go. That's what you hear most of the time, right? Those activity drivers are not that's not a regular employee typically assigned to it. So if it's just like an on-call or it's just assigned out, if they're not filling in for somebody, that's not substitute service. That activity driving gets a lot of people. Now, for those of you that said yes, I would think, and you can put it in the chat, but a lot of times we hear that they have somebody. They have assigned activity drivers. So if you have assigned activity drivers, Jack is scheduled to come in. He is your activity driver. He is gone. He is sick. He cannot do it. Tom fills in. Then that's substitute service, right? What bucket does it fall into? What does your documentation say to support it? The question was bona fide separation, not whether he was subbing during the 180-day break. Ooh, however, the only thing allowed is substitute or voluntary service, right? So to ensure that he has a bona fide separation, we have to know, we've got to classify it. We've got to know that it's substitute or voluntary service. If 8 days a month or less, but it said the activity bus is regularly assigned to regular bus drivers. It says typically. Activity route driving is typically assigned to bus route drivers. So that doesn't mean it always is. And these are written in a way because this is what we get from schools, and these are the scenarios we get. So this will all change, the answers will change. There's no right or wrong answer. All of these really are, what does your documentation say? Melissa terminated her office position in January 2024. She provided 8 days of substitute service in February, March, April, and May. Melissa decided to go work at a private school for fiscal year ending 25 and take a rollover from her school plan account. She submits an application in June of 2025. When is her 180-day separation period? So a couple of things I want to highlight. I'm not going to ask just because we are overtime, right? So work at a private school, we get that question often. Does it matter? It doesn't matter. It's not a school plan employer. You go work at a private school, you're good. Go work at Target, go work at a hospital, go work wherever you want. We don't care as long as it's not a school plan employer, right? So it takes a rollover from her school plan account. Remember, this is a distribution, right? So we know in this scenario, she's taking a distribution. So she submits her application in June of 2025. When is her 180-day separation period? The poll is up. Let's see, January 2024, June 2025. And I forget, I put that as an answer. You can't work at a private school. Yep, I already gave you the answer for that. All right, we saw 52 people in with us. We have 13 people that have answered so far. If you're still here and it's not just background noise, just go for it. Shoot an answer out there. All right, John, you want to close it up? All right, our poll ended in 5 people said January 2024 is her 180-day separation period start point, and 13 people said June. For those of you that said January 2024, why did you say that? Going over to the chat. LB 198. There we go, Tara. You bet. So let's remember the date. It's that March 19th, 2024 to current is the later of, right? But anything before that, their 180-day separation period starts on their termination date. Good job. Law changes we went over. So if you have any questions on law changes, please let us know. We have posted FAQs, we have posted notices, we try to do all of that on the website. If you have specific questions, let us know. If you have a specific question, you can put it in the Q&A. They're still there answering the questions. Making adjustments, Sammy went over that a lot. John, did you get out Sammy's adjustment templates examples that she made?
I did. I emailed that to everybody.
Oh, perfect. Hey, for all of you that are still on here, Sammy spent hours and hours and hours trying to help figure out how to make adjustments easier. So there is a packet. It was emailed to you. If you didn't get it, let us know. That has example after example after example of adjustments on how to create them. If we're looking at big picture wise and looking at adjustments for ineligible contributions, that means someone that should have never been in the plan. There is no time frame. Question that kept coming back in the survey that I put out was, what's the time frame for adjustments? There is no time frame. If you were not supposed to be in the plan, you cannot be in the plan and must be removed by an adjustment, right? And maybe there is also a different distinct process. So if you have somebody that has been in the plan for a while that should have never been in the plan, get a hold of us and we'll help personally walk you through that. If you find somebody that should have been in the plan that was never put in the plan, there's also no timeline on that. So they need to be put in the plan whenever they're found all the way to current, with makeup contributions made, employee, employer plus interest made. And remember that the contributions, both EE and ER, have to come from the employer. Whether or not you make that agreement with the member to pay it back, that's between you and the member. But as far as NPERS is concerned, it's got to come from the employer, and it has to come within 60 days of being found or NPERS informing you of it. So excess and insufficient are contributions that if you have somebody that should have been in the plan, that if you have somebody that should be in the plan, but you accidentally reported on something that's not pensionable, or you didn't report on something that was pensionable, then that's when that time frame starts. So if you find it, you just go a year back. And then if it's found in an audit, it's the year under audit to current. Pay versus reporting, we don't tell you when to pay. Ultimately, end of the day, we all know that it's easier if you pay when it's supposed to be reported, right? But that's what adjustments are for. I think I went over everything else on that slide here. Extra duty wages and hours. okay, we also, I mean, we are way over time now. This sheet that was emailed to you, so that mandatory reporting of extra duty, we did talk through all of that already. So maybe that's also why it went a little longer. These are the questions that came in, but these have already been answered. So that number one, what's required by law when reporting extra duty, that's that first page of that sheet that's going to tell you, and also have you understand that statutes give NPERS the authority to promulgate rules and regs, guidance processes on how to do that. So how does it make sense in the big picture, and why does it matter? And how and when do we track and report extra duty hours? Those are those two examples on the back. So walk through those, read those, right? It's going to walk you through how it really can substantially affect somebody's service credit in the end if the service hours are not reported for extra duty, and then ultimately how it can affect eligibility on that. If a staff only turns in hours in May and extra duty service rendered for July to May, when are we expected to complete and adjustment forms when they fail to turn in the logs? So we have more statute. We won't go over that, but let me get to this. So this is the answer to that question. If we are talking about full-time contributing employees, right? Those members that reach 1,000 hours, but they can't get any more than 1 year of service credit, you have to tell them to track their hours. You need to remind them to track their hours. Ultimately, end of the day, if they don't turn them in, that's on them, right? But however, non-contributing employees and part-time contributing employees, big deal. Onus is on you. We've got to get those hours in. And how can we help you, support you with your superintendents, with your employees? What can we do? What tools can we give to help support the hows and whys and what's needed in the process required from NPERS, right? Because if we're talking about non-contributing employees, their eligibility is dependent upon service hours, the hours they actually work. And we're talking about part-time contributing employees, those employees that don't report 1,000 hours in a year, their lifetime benefit is dependent upon it, right? So ultimately, they need to get the benefit that they deserve and that's owed to them, no more, no less. So we can only do that by knowing the hours that they work. The school manual, like I said, apparently some people don't use it. We did spend hours and hours and days in a room going over every single word. This is new, it's revamped, it's revised, it's edited. Please use it. Let us know if something is not in there that you want in there. The only way we know is if you tell us. So how can we help you? These were the additional questions. The answers are on there. I think you all have the slides now. So I have ended. I personally will stay on for a minute if I can answer any questions or answers through the Q&A. I can do that. I know that's typically what we do. I know that this was a little different than how we've done it in the past. We've left some time for question and answer, but because it is so interactive, we did it throughout. So I will be here and I can start answering questions here, but otherwise there's nothing else to present. John, Nick, Eva, Aaron, Stephanie, Sammy, if you're still there, anybody have anything else?
I think you just covered this,
No,
but
just
there
want
was
to
a question.
say thank you
Go
to
ahead.
everybody that's participated today. I will work hard and we'll go ahead and try to get this edited and uploaded to the website for anybody that's interested in going back and listening to any of this and going back through some of those questions. But thanks for participating. You guys have a great weekend.
All right, Jennifer, I just answered that. It's that first scenario is gonna tell you the hows and whys on somebody that works